Chapter 1699. Ruan Xingzhu returned to her room and changed into a set of snow-white morning clothes. When she came out, everyone's eyes immediately lit up. Her skin was originally fair, and when she wore the white muslin, she looked even more pitiful and delicate. Many people in the family sighed. The wife was so beautiful, but the master passed away. How unlucky! Of course, there were some who harbored ill intentions. The master passed away just like that, leaving behind a young and beautiful wife. Who knows which man would take advantage of her in the future? Of course, although everyone had their own thoughts, they all maintained a mournful expression. Ruan Xingzhu knelt in front of the morning hall. As she burned joss paper for her husband, she cried silently. The people around her felt the same way, and no one dared to disturb her. Looking at the coffin not far away, Ruan Xingzhu swore to herself, "Xinzhong, I will find out the truth. I will not let you die in vain." When they entered the city, it was almost evening. It took them a while to get back to the Yang clan. Before they knew it, night had fallen, and the people around them began to lessen. After all, this was not the first day of Yang Xinzhong's death, nor was it the 7th day of his death. The other members of the Yang clan came to accompany him for a while, and then went back to do their own things. Even Yang Xinzhong's concubines had their own things to take care of. They took turns to eat, wash, and so on. With Yang Jiyuan controlling the situation from behind, the people in the morning hall quickly left one by one. In the end, only Ruan Xingzhu and a few maids were left. It was midnight, and the maids began to doze off. Ruan Xingzhu thought for a while, and then ordered Pearl to take the maids away. After all, if the news of opening the coffin was leaked, it would cause a huge commotion. The fewer people who knew, the better. Pearl nodded and quickly found an excuse to take care of the maids and servants. Only Ruan Xingzhu was left in the morning hall, kneeling in silence. Not long after, Yang Jiyuan hurried over. Seeing her beautiful figure, he couldn't help but stop and admire it for a while. Then he walked over and said, "Sister-in-law, I have arranged everything." "Okay, thank you." Ruan Xingzhu nodded and prepared to stand up. Perhaps it was because she had been kneeling for too long, but her legs were a little weak. On top of that, her head was a little dizzy. Her entire body swayed, and she looked like she was about to fall. Yang Jiyuan quickly ran over to support her. "Sister-in-law, be careful." "Thank you." Ruan Xingzhu's condition had finally stabilized, and she retracted her hand without a trace. However, she didn't think too much about it. After all, when she had first joined the Yang family, this second uncle of hers was still a child. She had only treated him as a younger brother. The reason why she kept her distance from him was because of a woman's reserved nature and the etiquette she had been taught since she was young. Yang Jiyuan didn't show any special expression. He said naturally, "I've sent away all the people nearby. No one will come here for a while. Sister-in-law, you can rest assured." "All right, let's open the coffin and examine it," Ruan Xingzhu suddenly said hesitantly. "Why don't we see the coroner?" Yang Jiyuan explained, "Opening the coffin is not a trivial matter. The fewer people involved, the better. Otherwise, if it is leaked, we will face a lot of trouble. As for examining the corpse, we are all considered to be part of the Jianghu. It shouldn't be a problem to see if there are any external injuries or poisoning. Moreover, I have participated in many cases when I was in Xing province, so I have experience in this area." Ruan Xingzhu felt that what he said made sense, so she didn't dwell on it. The two of them came to the coffin together. Yang Jin bowed respectfully. "Big brother, we didn't want to disturb your rest. We just wanted to make sure that you weren't harmed. If you know in the underworld, you can blame me. It has nothing to do with sister-in-law." Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly said, "This was my idea. Second uncle, you were just helping me. If Xinzhong wants to blame someone, he should blame me." Yang Jiyuan smiled. "All right, sister-in-law, we don't have to fight anymore. Even if Big Brother knows in the underworld, he won't blame us. Sister-in-law, step back a little. I'll open the coffin." "All right, be careful." Ruan Xingzhu lifted the hem of her dress and took a few steps back. Yang Jiyuan had been fiddling with the coffin for a long time. Suddenly, he said, "Sister-in-law, come and help me. Press down here." Ruan Xingzhu knew that it was indeed very troublesome for one person to open such a large coffin, so she didn't have to worry about him. She walked over and asked, "Is it here? Just a little bit more. Here? Ah, what are you doing?" Looking at the angry expression on Ruan Xingzhu's face, Yang Jiyuan said, "Sister-in-law, I'm sorry. I accidentally touched your acupuncture point. Let me see where I touched it and unseal it for you. Take your filthy hands off me." Ruan Xingzhu's beautiful eyes were filled with anger. So the murderer is you. How could she not understand what was going on? Unfortunately, she suddenly heard the news of her husband's death today. Coupled with the matter with Song Qing-shu, her heart was filled with guilt. As a result, her reaction was a little slower than usual. She ignored Yang Jiyuan's several unreasonable words and actions, which led to her being controlled by him. "Sister-in-law, don't talk nonsense." Yang Jiyuan shook his finger. "What murderer? I don't understand at all. How could Ruan Xingzhu believe his nonsense?" She bit her lip and glared at him. "I was wondering why Xinzhong would commit suicide. There must be something fishy about it, but I never thought that the murderer would be you. Your father died early. In those early years, your eldest brother raised you single-handedly. It can be said that an elder brother is like a father. Why did you do such a disgraceful thing?" Ruan Xingzhu's chest heaved up and down. It was obvious that she had discovered the truth, which shocked and angered her. Yang Jiyuan was also provoked. The smile on his face disappeared and was replaced with agitation. "I'm saving the Yang family. What did eldest brother obtain after following Han Xingzhou for all these years? He's just a Xingyuan prefecture judge, and I'm just a small warehouse manager. Although I can be considered a department with real power in the eyes of those big shots in the imperial court, this kind of official is nothing. The dignified second young master of the Yang family is actually just a warehouse manager. I feel ashamed every time I tell others." Ruan Xingzhu's eyes were filled with deep disappointment. "That's because Minister Han is afraid that we'll attract the wind when we're a tall tree. The Ruan family is already the #1 emperor in the world, and the Yang family is a first-class noble family in Sichuan. If they appoint you to a high official position, it'll be like adding oil to the fire, and people will be jealous of you. I'm afraid it won't be long before the Yang family is destroyed." Yang Jiyuan waved his hand to interrupt her. "Don't talk about this nonsense. The Han family is the #1 family in the two Song dynasties, but didn't Han Xingzhou also become a general? And the Jia family, the Shi family, the Wang family, and the Shui family. Which of these families isn't far superior to our Yang family? Didn't they also become prime ministers and generals?" Ruan Xingzhu was speechless by his question. For a moment, she really didn't know how to answer him. Yang Jiyuan snorted and continued, "Moreover, Han Xingzhou's northern expedition has failed miserably, and Wu Shi has betrayed him. Anyone with a discerning eye knows that he's finished. When the time comes, how can we, as the Han faction, end up well? As the saying goes, a building is about to collapse. Of course, I have to find another way out for my family." Ruan Xingzhu's mind flashed, and she finally understood. "You've sided with Jia Sherdao," Yang Jian said calmly. "Anyone with a discerning eye knows that Prime Minister Jia will definitely win this power struggle. Why would the Yang family die with Han Xingzhou? This is called choosing a good tree to nest in. You're comparing yourself to a beast. No wonder you killed your brother." Ruan Xingzhu was full of regret. She hadn't been back to the Yang family for years, so she wasn't familiar with the Yang family at all. As a result, she didn't know that Yang Jiyuan's mentality had changed so much over the years, and she hadn't been able to warn her husband in time. "I'm doing this for the family." Yang Jiyuan obviously thought that such a thing was a bit rebellious, so he tried to find a reason to convince himself. "I prevented the Yang family from dying. The ancestors of the Yang family will understand me." "You're being unreasonable." Ruan Xingzhu quickly thought about how she could get out of this situation. Should she pretend to be polite to him and stall for time until the rest of the Yang family came? But she had sent Pearl and the others away in the Yang family. Since Yang Jiyuan dared to expose himself here, he was obviously fully prepared. At that moment, Yang Jiyuan finally calmed down a bit. He stared at her face and said softly, "Actually, I have another reason for doing this." "What reason?" Ruan Xingzhu wanted him to talk more. That way, she would have enough time to wait for people to come and think of a way. Yang Jiyuan didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked closer and admired her face as if he were looking at a piece of art. "Sister-in-law, do you know? When you married into the Yang family, I fell in love with you the first time I saw you. I thought, how could there be such a beautiful woman in the world? And I swore to myself that I would marry you. Unfortunately, you're my sister-in-law." Even though she realized something when he stared at her, Ruan Xingzhu was still shocked to hear him say it. "How old were you back then? How could you have such thoughts? Age doesn't determine one's ambition," Yang Jian interrupted her. "Plus, love can make a man mature earlier. That's not maturity. You're a pervert." Ruan Xingzhu was so angry that her entire body was trembling. However, fear began to rise in her heart. If Yang Jiyuan really had designs on her, he would have done it in the dead of the night. "Whatever you say. Anyway, I've already achieved my long-cherished wish. I'm finally going to have you." Yang Jiyuan moved closer to her and took a deep breath. "Sister-in-law, you smell so good." Shameless. Ruan Xingzhu had goosebumps all over her body. Unfortunately, her acupoints had been sealed, so she couldn't resist at all. "Sister-in-law, do you know how many nights I've been thinking about you? Even in my dreams, I dream of getting intimate with you. However, you only come back a few times a year. It's difficult for me to even see you," Yang Jiyuan suddenly said hatefully. "Sometimes, I wonder if Big Brother is a man. He actually allowed his beautiful wife to show her face in public. Since he's wasting God's gift, I won't be polite anymore." Yang Jiyuan's expression turned a little dark. His finger gently lifted a corner of her clothes. "You look so good in morning clothes." This time, Ruan Xingzhu really panicked. "What are you doing? This is your Big Brother's morning hall. You'll be struck by lightning." "So what if it's my Big Brother's morning hall? It's more exciting this way." Yang Jiyuan gulped. In the end, he couldn't hold back and pounced on her. Chapter 1700. What's the matter? Yang Jiyuan couldn't help but be furious. The dream that he had dreamed of since he was young was about to be realized, but he was interrupted at this critical moment. If it wasn't for the fact that he had given a death order not to disturb him unless it was the most urgent matter, and he guessed that his subordinates might indeed have an urgent matter, he might have pulled out his sword and chopped the person outside. Sensing the anger in his voice, the person outside hurriedly said, "General Shun Xiaolong of the Xing Province Middle Military wants to see Master." Shun Xiaolong? Yang Jiyuan frowned. They were both officials of the Xing Province, so he naturally knew who Shun Xiaolong was. Shun Xiaolong was a famous person in the Xing Province. Although he was a military official, he regarded himself as a scholar. He even gave himself the nickname Three Emotions Taoist and recited a lousy poem all day long. "Fate comes and goes like water. Love gathers and scatters like water." Shin Xiaolong's background was a bit mysterious. Some said he used to be a man of Jianghu who was frustrated in love. Some said he used to be a failed Jiren who gave up learning and entered the military after a long period of failure. Some even said he was from the Shun family of Shanin. But as far as he knew, there shouldn't be such a person in the Shin family. Sometimes, Yang Jiyuan even speculated maliciously. This guy always talked about love. Could he have been a rapist in the past? However, this person was an important person in the Xing province military, second only to Yang Xinzhong. He also said he would come to see Yang Jiyuan soon. Yang Jiyuan didn't dare to neglect him. He ordered his subordinates outside. "Tell him to wait for me in the study." After hesitating for a moment, he carried Ruan Xingzhu and ran to a secret room next door. Then he smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, I will come back to accompany you after I get rid of the people outside." Ruan Xingzhu trembled with anger, but her acupoints were sealed, so she couldn't do anything. After a few steps, Yang Jiyuan seemed to have thought of something. He walked back, took out a handkerchief, wrapped it into a ball, and stuffed it into her mouth. "Hee, in case you scream." Woo, Ruan Xingzhu struggled. The anger in her eyes seemed to melt the other party. Yang Jiyuan laughed. "Sister-in-law, don't worry. I will come back to serve you soon." Thinking back to the warm and moving feeling when he hugged her just now, he simply wanted to get on her immediately. Unfortunately, he understood that business was more important. Yang Jiyuan felt as if a ball of fire had ignited in his lower abdomen, and he walked faster and faster. Soon, he arrived at the study, and he saw that other than Shun Xiaolong, there were a few other people there. Some of them he recognized, some of them he didn't. All of them sat there with solemn expressions on their faces, and the room was filled with a solemn atmosphere. Brother Yang, seeing him arrive, Shun Xiaolong hurriedly got up and saluted. Brother Shun, this. Yang Jiyuan was puzzled. Shun Xiaolong quickly said, About the matter I told you last time, I don't know if Brother Yang has considered it or not. Do you want to join? Yang Jin noticed that when he spoke, the people around him were all staring at him with unfriendly expressions, vaguely surrounding him in the middle, as if he would be attacked if he said no. Yang Jin hurriedly said, It's my duty to kill a traitor, not to mention that this traitor killed my big brother. If I don't take revenge, then I'm not a man. Before, Shun Xiaolong had come to probe him. It must be known that Wu Shi's sudden betrayal caught the soldiers and civilians in Sichuan off guard. Some chose to obey, some chose to watch from the sidelines, but there were some hot-blooded men who disregarded the danger and chose to eliminate the traitor for the country. However, Wu Shi was in charge of the military power in Sichuan, and he also controlled the Sichuan government, so these people who were determined to serve the country could only act with extreme caution. With Brother Yang's help, there's no need to worry about failure. Shun Xiaolong was overjoyed. The reason why he came to find Yang Jiyuan was that the Yang family played an important role in Sichuan, and his big brother had just died because of Wu Shi. Yang Jiyuan smiled and then asked, Who are these brothers? Shun Xiaolong introduced, This is Jinshi Yang Junyu, this is Li Kunchen, and this is Li Biao. Brother Yang should have heard of them. Yang Jiyuan cupped his hands and said, I've heard of you for a long time. He was not just trying to flatter them. These were all famous people in Sichuan. Even if he had not seen them before, he had heard of them. Shun Xiaolong pulled another group of people and introduced. These are Wu Shi's subordinates, Zhang Lin and Zhu Bongning. Brother Yang should know them. We've even drunk a few times. Yang Jiyuan exchanged greetings again. Shun Xiaolong continued. This is the military warrior Li Gui, and this is the Jianghu hero Lai Fu. Both of them are highly skilled in martial arts. Nice to meet you. The country can only prosper because there are loyal and righteous people like you. Yang Jiyuan was secretly shocked. He also knew martial arts, so he could clearly feel that these two people's martial arts were superior to the others. Of course, the most unfathomable one was still Shun Xiaolong, but he could not see through him. The group of people modestly declined for a while, and Shun Xiaolong said, Brother Yang, we plan to take action tonight. Yang Jin was drinking tea, and he was so shocked that he almost spat it out so soon. Shun Xiaolong nodded. As the saying goes, speed is important in war. The longer we delay, the more likely that Wu Shi will be on guard, so we have to catch him unprepared. Yang Jin looked embarrassed. Won't we be courting death with so few people? Shun Xiaolong replied, We still have dozens of heroes waiting for the signal outside. We can set off at any time. Yang Jin still shook his head. There are still too few people. Wu Shi's palace is heavily guarded, and he himself is a top-notch master. The possibility of our success is zero. The news of the martial contest had spread all over the world, and everyone knew that Wu Shi's swordsmanship was outstanding. What if we can persuade Gusa Morong Fu to join us? Yang Junyu asked. Morong Fu? Yang Jiyuan was shocked. Didn't he accept Wu Shi's false position? Yang Junyu shook his head and said, He may also be forced by the situation. After all, the Morong family has been loyal for generations since Duke Yanzhao of Hunan Commandery King. Morong Fu also has a good reputation, so there is no reason for him to do this. Li Zhenkuan, who was at the side, also added, Moreover, during the martial contest, Morong Fu lost to Wu Shi by a single move. I don't believe he's willing to be Wu Shi's dog. At this time, Shun Xiaolong spoke up. Brother Yang, our official positions are too low and cannot convince the masses. After we kill Wu Shi, we need someone to take care of him. After thinking about it, the most suitable candidate is none other than Murong Fu. Not to mention, he lost to Wu Shi by a single move, so dealing with Wu Shi's superior martial arts will increase our chances. General Zhang Lin said, "Now Murong Fu holds an important position in Wu Shi's puppet regime and controls a considerable part of the power. As long as we incite him to betray us, we have a 90% chance of success." Shen Xiaolong continued, "I heard that Brother Jiyuan and Prince Murong have a good relationship. Why don't Brother Jiyuan come forward and persuade him?" This, Yang Jiyuan was a little hesitant. He was not worried about anything else, but he was going to go back and kiss his sister-in-law after dealing with the visitors. But if he went with them, how could he finish it in a short time? Don't hesitate. Once you miss today's opportunity, you won't find such a good opportunity again. Shen Xiaolong subconsciously glanced at Zhang Lin and Zhu Bongning. These two were not only Wu Shi's subordinates, but also responsible for guarding him for the second half of the night. This rotation would probably take 10 days to half a month, and during such a long time, it was very likely that something would happen. Zhang Lin and Zhu Bongning's identity would also be very easy to be exposed. "Well, I'll try." Yang Jiyuan got up and walked to Murong Fu's residence with a group of people. The other party's residence was in the same direction as Wu Shi's current residence, so there was no need to worry about delay. The group of people quickly arrived at Murong Fu's residence. Because of Yang Jiyuan, they were able to meet him without any problems. Shen Xiaolong went straight to the point. "Young master, are you going to be the prime minister of this traitor?" Murong Fu was faced with the same situation as Yang Jiyuan just now. He could feel that this group of people was ready to strike, as if he only needed to nod his head and a thunderous strike would come. Although he boasted of his superior martial arts, the other party was outnumbered. Furthermore, Shen Xiaolong was their leader, and there was also Li Gui, the brave warrior of the army, and Lai Fu, the righteous warrior of the pugilistic world. All of them were experts. In this small space, they might really be able to kill him. Murong Fu reacted quickly. He immediately cried and howled, "My Murong family has been loyal for generations. How can I be a traitor?" The Murong family had been hiding their intention of recovering the Great Yin Kingdom very well. Apart from a few people who knew about it, most people's impression of the Murong family was that they were the descendants of the southern He County prince who fought together with Emperor Taizu. Therefore, no one doubted his words. He continued to cry, "It's a pity that I don't have any soldiers in my hands, so I can't rise up. Only a hero can kill this traitor." What he said was indeed from the bottom of his heart. Everyone was shocked and terrified by Wu Shi's betrayal, but he was the happiest. He could sense that this was a great opportunity, and he had never felt so close to the recovery of Great Yin. If he could handle it well, he might be able to seize the fertile land of Shu, which was easy to defend and difficult to attack. When the time was right, he could raise the banner of Great Yin, and that would be considered as fulfilling the long-cherished wish of his ancestors. Yang Junyu, a jinshi, smiled and took out a roll of imperial silk. He said, "Prince Murong, receive the imperial edict. His Majesty has appointed you as the appeasing envoy. You will control the troops in Sichuan and kill the traitor, Wu Shi." "Yes, sir." Murong Fu was overjoyed. The appeasing envoy was a temporary position set up by the imperial court during wartime. It was in charge of the military and government of a region. Although it would be abolished after the war, it was still a very powerful position. It could be said that it was the head of the military and government of a region. Yang Jiyuan frowned. He had already joined Jia Shidao's side, so he knew that the imperial court didn't issue such an edict. So this imperial edict, as a rich family in Sichuan, the Yang family had seen the real imperial edict. Soon, he noticed that the imperial edict in Yang Junyu's hand was a little rough. He immediately realized that this imperial edict was forged. However, he immediately noticed the meaningful expressions on the faces of the others around him. Obviously, they also knew about it and were most likely involved in it. Now the situation was critical. As long as they could kill Wu Shi, not only would they not be punished for forging the imperial edict, but they would also be rewarded. If they failed to kill Wu Shi, they would also die, and the crime of forging the imperial edict would be forgotten. This Morong Fu is truly a wily old fox. Yang Jiyuan sneered secretly. Even he could see that the imperial edict was fake, let alone the descendants of the commandery king of Hunan. God knew how many imperial edicts their family had kept. Although he cursed, he didn't say anything in the end. He knew that the most important task at the moment was to kill Wu Shi. After a short discussion, the group directly rushed to where Wu Shi was. After Song Qing-shu and Run Yingying separated from Ruan Xingzhu, they secretly followed Yi Lin and Tian Boguang. Tian Boguang was experienced in Jianghu, so he quickly noticed that they were being followed. He was about to fight, but Song Qing-shu revealed his true identity. Tian Boguang suddenly looked like he had seen a ghost, and he didn't have the courage to draw his sword. Chapter 17:01. Song Qing-shu ignored him and directly asked Yilin. After Yilin found out about their identities, especially after learning about Ren Yingying, she was simply overjoyed. It could be said that she told him everything she knew. It turned out that although Yilin lived in Mount Hung, she often paid attention to news about Ling Huchong. Because of what happened in Fujin, she also knew that Ling Huchong was Wu Shi Wu Tianda. Therefore, when she heard the rumor that Wu Shi had betrayed the country, she was the first to not believe it and came all the way to Chengdu. Bujia was busy, so Tian Boguang volunteered to protect her. Knowing that both sides had the same goal, Song Qing-shu and Ren Yingying no longer hesitated. They directly rushed to Wu Shi's mansion, planning to ask Ling Huchong directly. He was a strong martial artist, and Tian Boguang was also good at movement techniques. It was not difficult for them to bring the two women and easily sneak into Wu Shi's mansion. Along the way, they did not alert any guards, but Song Qing-shu was full of doubts. Isn't this a little too smooth? I feel that the level of the guards in this mansion is really not good. Not to mention me, even a second or third-rate Jianghu person might not be able to stop them. They wandered around the mansion for half a day, but still could not find Ling Huchong. They had no choice but to catch a guard. After some questioning, they found out that this was the official mansion arranged by the imperial court for Wu Shi. Not long ago, he claimed to be the king of Shu and publicly built a temporary imperial residence. He had moved there long ago. The king of Shu's mansion? Song Qing-shu frowned. They had just entered Chengdu today and did not know the situation here. Yilin and Tian Boguang were obviously the same, so they came empty-handed. After asking about the location of the king of Shu's mansion, the group was ready to rush there. Suddenly, Song Qing-shu's expression changed. Ren Yingying, who was beside him, was very observant. She noticed his abnormality and asked, "What's wrong?" Song Qing-shu took out a bell from his bosom, and it was currently vibrating rapidly. Is this the bell of the heart parasite? Ren Yingying was, after all, the saintess of the Sun-Moon sect. She was very knowledgeable and immediately recognized the item from the Five Immortals sect. Yes. Song Qing-shu smiled awkwardly and explained to her what had happened. Back then, he had thought that Ruan Xingzhu was Ren Yingying, so he had given her a bell to protect herself. In the end, he had been too busy and had forgotten about it. It seems that Madame Ruan is in danger now. As Ren Yingying spoke, she suddenly felt a little jealous. I didn't have this to protect myself when I was in danger, but you knew immediately when she was in danger. Song Qing-shu was also extremely embarrassed. Didn't I mistake her for you before? Then I forgot to get the bell back. He also understood that this kind of thing would make any woman depressed. He hurriedly said, "Forget it. Let's go to the king of Shu's mansion." However, Ren Yingying shook her head. This bell is ringing so urgently. Obviously, Madame Ruan is in great danger. If she was an ordinary person, it would be fine. But now, she is related to the safety of your goods and the future ownership of the Ruan family. So, we have to save her first. Song Qing-shu was moved. Everything she did was for the benefit of her lover. Which man wouldn't be moved? On the side, Yilin's eyes flickered as she looked at the two. In fact, her heart was full of doubts because she knew that Big Brother Linghu and Miss Ren were a couple. What was the situation now? However, she was kind-hearted. Although she had some doubts, she was too embarrassed to ask them directly. Elin, Tian Wang, you go to the king of Shu's mansion to find Ling Hu Chong and ask him. Song Lang, and I will come later. Ren Yingying said to the two. Oh, okay. Elin nodded hurriedly. She had a noble temperament that made her subconsciously obey. From the guard, he found out the location of the Yang family's mansion and found that it came from the same direction as the bell. Song Qing-shu knocked the guard out and then asked Tian Wang to take care of Elin. He quickly rushed to the Yang family's mansion with Ren Yingying. Although Qingdu was a big city, Song Qing-shu's lightness skill was excellent. He used it all the way and arrived at the Yang family's mansion in a short time. Looking at the white elegiac couplets at the door, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel puzzled. The Yang family is holding a funeral now. Why is she in danger? Ren Yingying said, go in and see. The two sneaked in quietly. Now that the Yang family had lost their master, the defense was much more lax than usual. However, even if the defense was tight, it couldn't stop the two. They followed the instructions of the heart-poisonous insect bell and went all the way to the morning hall. Song Qing-shu said curiously, why is there no one in the morning hall? Something abnormal must be a demon. Be careful, Ren Yingying reminded. The bell is vibrating more frequently. It seems that we are approaching the target. The two searched all the way and finally found Madame Ruan tied to a bed in a secret room next to the morning hall. Madam, this is... With Ren Yingying around, it was not convenient for Song Qing-shu to untie her personally. He stood at the side and asked in confusion. Seeing this familiar yet strange man, Ruan Xingzhu's eyes became misty. She almost cried. The 2 hours just now were the most difficult and darkest hours of her life. She was afraid to hear footsteps, afraid that the door would be opened, and afraid that Yang Jiyuan would come back. She knew what kind of fate was waiting for her at that time. However, she was conceited and quick-witted. She couldn't think of any way to get out of this situation, no matter how hard she racked her brains. The acupoints all over her body were sealed and tied up. Her mouth was stuffed with cloth, and she couldn't make a sound. The only thing she could do was to wait for Yang Jiyuan to come back and visit her. However, when she thought that the coffin of her husband who was killed by him was still next door, she wanted to die immediately rather than suffer that kind of humiliation. However, it was difficult for her to die even if she wanted to. Along the way, she trembled in fear many times, but she didn't know why Yang Jiyuan didn't come back. This rekindled a glimmer of hope in her desperate state. She kept circulating her energy to break through her acupoints. However, after half a day, she could only move her hands, which were tied behind her back. Just as she was about to fall into despair again, her fingertips suddenly touched the heart venom bell on her wrist. She thought of what Song Qing-shu had said to her, shook the bell with hope. Firstly, she wasn't sure if the bell was that magical. Secondly, even if she could really contact him, he was currently working for Miss Ren. Why would he waste time on a woman he had nothing to do with? Just as she was worrying about her gains and losses, she didn't expect to see him break through the door. At that moment, she couldn't help but be a little dazed. In the past, she used to scoff at the plot of the hero saving the damsel in distress in Jiangnan novels. Now, her heart was beating faster. She gradually understood. No wonder they liked it so much. Madam, are you all right? At this time, Ren Yingying untied the ropes and acupoints on her body. However, she saw that Ruan Xingzhu was sitting there in a daze without saying anything. Ren Yingying couldn't help but ask, I'm fine. Ruan Xingzhu blushed and quickly retracted her gaze from Song Qing-shu. Song Qing-shu said with a smile, how do you plan to repay me for saving your life, madam? Ruan Xingzhu's expression turned serious. If young master can kill Yang Jiyuan for me, I can promise you anything. Previously on the Mirror Lake, the two of them had the most intimate relationship, so she subconsciously said that, but she did not think about what it meant for a woman to agree to anything. As expected, Ren Yingying's expression became strange. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. He quickly changed the topic. Yang Jiyuan seems to be your husband's younger brother. Why? Only then did Ruan Xingzhu tell her the whole story. Ren Yingying, who was at the side, was infuriated. How shameless! Song Qingshu said in a deep voice. Where is Yang Jiyuan now? I'll help you take revenge. Firstly, he did want the loyalty of the Ruan family. Secondly, it would be intolerable if he didn't kill this kind of person who killed his brother and bullied his wife. He just received the notice and went out to meet some guests. I don't know where he is now. Although Ruan Xingzhu looked weak on the outside, she had single-handedly taken charge of the Ruan clan all these years. Furthermore, she had never relied on her husband. Deep down, she could be considered a strong woman. However, she had encountered the sudden death of her husband today, followed by the incident of her brother-in-law. For the past half a day, her heart had been on an emotional roller coaster ride. As a result, she suddenly had a feeling that it was good to have a man to rely on. He should still be in the residence. Let's go out and look for him. Song Qingshu brought the two women to the study room to search for Yang Jiyuan, but after looking around, there was no trace of Yang Jiyuan. In the end, he grabbed the guard and questioned him. He had left with Shun Xiaolong and the others for a while. Where did he go? After asking again and again, the guards still didn't know where Yang Jiyuan went. The few of them suddenly fell into an impasse. At this moment, a fire suddenly lit up a few miles away, and there were faint sounds of fighting. Ren Yingying's expression changed. That's where the king of Shu's residence is. Looks like something happened there, Song Qingshu said to Ruan Xingzhu. We're going to the king of Shu's residence now. Yang Jiyuan might be there. Why don't you go with us, madam? Unexpectedly, Ruan Xingzhu shook her head. I lost my composure just now. Now that I've calmed down, I realize that killing Yang Jiyuan isn't a good choice. After all, in the eyes of those who don't know him, he's still the righteous second master of the Yang family. If we're not careful, we'll give ourselves a handle. When that happens, all kinds of rumors will spread, and it won't be good for either of us. Song Qingshu was stunned, but he soon understood her concerns. After all, Ruan Xingzhu was a beautiful woman. Now that she was a widow, there was a lot of gossip in front of a widow's door. The Chinese people had a rich imagination, and they were the best at thinking in that direction. When the time came, under the influence of someone with ulterior motives, it would be easy for people to think that she had colluded with him to murder her husband and then killed the second young master of the Yang family who had discovered their affair. Compared to Yang Jiyuan murdering his own brother, this rumor was easier to believe. Thank you for reminding me, madam. Song Qingshu was so scared that he broke into a cold sweat. Now that he wanted to fight for the world, what he cared about most was his reputation. If he was involved in this dispute, he would be doomed eternally. Ruan Xingzhu quickly said, I won't go to the king of Shu's residence. If young master runs into him there, just pretend that nothing happened. I need to make some arrangements, contact the subordinates loyal to Zhenzhong, and collect decisive evidence to give Yang Jiyuan a fatal blow. If madam stays here and encounters danger, Song Qingshu said with a frown. Hearing his concern for her, Ruan Xingzhu's heart warmed. She smiled and said, After all, I've been running the Ruan family for so many years, and I've been through all kinds of storms. I fell into the trap because I didn't expect Yang Jiyuan to be the murderer. If I fail again, I'd rather die. Chapter 1702. Madame Ruan is really thoughtful. Congratulations on adding another capable assistant. On the way to the king of Shu's mansion, Ren Yingying said with a faint smile. Song Qingshu said grumpily, Come on, you're obviously worried about Ling Huchong now, but you pretend to be calm to tease me. Ren Yingying hurriedly explained. Song Qingshu pressed her lips and said, Humans are not plants or trees. Even if you keep a cat or a dog for a long time, you will develop feelings, let alone a human. Don't be too anxious and think that you can't forget him. Don't blame yourself for this. It's all human nature. Ren Yingying looked at him deeply and said, Song, it's my greatest luck to meet you in this life. She was not lying. No other man in this world could be so calm and magnanimous. The time they had spent together with Ling Huchong before had become a thorn in their hearts. Only Song Qingshu had not only let it go, but he had also come to comfort her. Song Qing Shu couldn't help laughing. If it was 2 years ago, you wouldn't believe it yourself. At that time, you wanted to kill me. Rin Yingying couldn't help laughing when he reminded her of the past. She blushed and said coquettishly, "You were such a rascal at that time." Murong Fu, three emotions Taoist Shun Xiaolong, Yang Jiyuan, and more than 70 people directly rushed into the king of Shu's mansion. The guards outside did not stop them because Zhang Lin and Zhu Bongning were garrison generals, so they let them in. However, they were not the only guards in the king of Shu's mansion. When they reached the inner layer, they were stopped by another garrison general who trespassed into the king of Shu's palace. At this time, Jin Shuyang Jinyu directly took out the imperial edict. By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees. It listed a total of 20 crimes of Wu Shi's treason and specially appointed Murong Fu as the pacification envoy to suppress the rebellion, saying that only the leader would be punished and the rest would not be investigated. The guards listened and looked at each other. In the end, no one knew who took the lead, but they all dispersed. Shun Xiaolong and the others were even more shocked. He'd originally thought that there would be a bitter battle here, but who would have imagined that these guards would actually surrender without a fight? Could it be that everyone was on the side of the imperial court and was unwilling to be coerced by Wu Shi to commit treason? Now that there was a chance, everyone wanted to set things right. However, he did not have the time to study this problem. Instead, he led a group of people and rushed into the inner residence. "What are you doing?" It was so noisy outside that Wu Shi finally heard the commotion and walked out of the bedroom. Seeing a group of people rushing over aggressively, she couldn't help but be surprised. "You've betrayed the country and proclaimed yourself the king of Shu. We've come together to kill you. Hand over your life." Murong Fu reprimanded in a stern voice. Without waiting for the other party to reply, he drew his sword and stabbed towards Wu Shi's vital points. Wu Shi opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but seeing that the other party was using a killing move, he didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly drew his sword to meet the attack. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged 7 or 8 moves. Yang Jin, who was at the side, shouted, "This traitor's martial arts are superior. Everyone, let's attack together. We're getting rid of a scourge for the country. There's no need to follow the rules of the pugilistic world." With that said, he brandished his sword and rushed forward. The military warrior Li Gui, the pugilistic hero Lai Fu, and a large group of people rushed forward at the same time. However, Wu Shi's swordsmanship was indeed incomparably brilliant. A snow-white flower of the sword floated in all directions, followed by continuous screams of pain. Some were blocking the ground, some were holding their bleeding wrists and retreating, and some were covering their eyes and wailing in pain. After a few exchanges, those with inferior martial arts were heavily injured and retreated from the battlefield. In the end, only Murong Fu, Yang Jiyuan, Li Gui, and Lai Fu were left to surround Wu Shi. Shun Xiaolong, who was at the side, secretly frowned. He felt that there was something strange about today's events. Whether it was the guards that he thought would be heavily guarded, or Wu Shi's hesitant expression just now, there seemed to be something wrong. However, the cries of surprise that rang out in the field woke him up. Even though they were outnumbered, Wu Shi's swordsmanship was too brilliant, and she was gradually gaining the upper hand. Murong Fu was able to protect himself, but Yang Jun, Li Gui, and Lai Fu already had a few wounds on their bodies. If it weren't for the fact that their martial arts were not weak and they managed to avoid being hit in their vitals, they might have already been lying on the ground. "Brother Shun, why aren't you attacking?" Yang Jiyuan cried out in alarm. However, just as he was distracted, another bloody hole appeared on his body, and he hurriedly focused on defense. Seeing that Wu Shi's every move was ruthless and fatal, Shin Xiaolong felt that he was thinking too much and hurriedly drew his sword to attack. Fate comes and goes. Fate is like water. Feelings gather and scatter. Where do they go? Hearing him recite a poem, whether it was Yang Jin or Murong Fu, they both cursed in their hearts, thinking, "What the F Aster CK is this? Why is he still so showy?" However, Shin Xiaolong's martial arts were really not for show. His swordsmanship was as smooth as flowing water, and as soon as he joined in, the pressure on everyone was greatly reduced. In the end, it was basically Morong Fu who was in charge of defense, Shun Xiaolong who was in charge of offense, and Yang Jiyuan and a few others were waiting for an opportunity to attack. Wu Shi secretly frowned. These people were all experts, especially Morong Fu's fake revolving star passage technique, which was best at borrowing force to attack force. If he was a little careless, his sword would be moved to the side. Shun Xiaolong's swordsmanship was as smooth as flowing water at one moment, like the clouds and mist in the next, with very few openings. Occasionally, he would reveal one or two openings, but they would disappear in a flash under the cover of the others, making it impossible for him to counterattack. On the side, there was still a group of soldiers eyeing him covetously. Wu Shi knew that if this went on, he would be in danger. Unfortunately, although he understood, he was powerless to change it. At this moment, two voices suddenly came from the courtyard door. Brother Linghu, Brother Linghu, I'm here to help you. Everyone turned around and saw a little nun and a sadhu rushing over. Who are they? Who is this Brother Linghu they're talking about? After all, not everyone knew Wu Shi's true identity. The two of them took advantage of this moment when everyone was distracted. The sadhu took out a quick knife and forced Yang Jun, Li Gui, and Lai Fu to the side. The little nun waved a long sword and directly blocked the three emotions Taoist priest Shun Xiaolong. Although it was obvious that her internal energy was insufficient, her swordsmanship was tight and flawless, and for a moment, she caught the other party off guard. These two people were naturally Tian Boguang and Yilin. In fact, in terms of martial arts, Yang Jiyuan and the other two were no weaker than Tian Boguang. The reason why he could temporarily fight one against three was largely because all three of them were injured. In addition, seeing that his knife was sharp, they could not figure out his strength in a short time, so they did not dare to be careless. As for Yilin, the reason why she could block Shun Xiaolong was because he saw such a delicate and pitiful little nun and could not bear to hurt her. However, this made things difficult for Morong Fu. Originally, it was 5 against 1, but now it had become 1 against 1. Wu Shi was also angry, and every move she made was merciless. He had to be 120% vigilant and use his daily skills to barely protect himself. But in his heart, he cursed Shun Xiaolong half to death. Shun Xiaolong was also in a difficult position. He frowned and said, "Little nun, quickly get out of the way, lest you get hurt." Yilin wrinkled her nose and replied in a deadpan manner, "Old Taoist, quickly step aside, lest you incur the wrath of the Buddha." Although Shun Xiaolong was a general, he was dressed like a Taoist. Everyone has the right to punish a traitor. What crime is there to be guilty of? Shun Xiaolong was speechless. Besides, I usually worship the 3 pure ones and 4 royals. Even if I make a mistake, what does it have to do with Buddha? In fact, he still wanted to complain. How was he old? Yilin was startled and blinked her big eyes. Hey, that's right. Shun Xiaolong suddenly did not know whether to laugh or cry. The pitiful appearance of the little nun in front of him made him feel awkward. A Taoist flirting with a nun, it's really rare to see a long time. Nonsense, it's obviously this little nun flirting with the old Taoist. I'm afraid the Taoist's heart is moved. Shouldn't a nun be a couple with a monk? The eyes of that ascetic monk over there seem to be red, and the knife in his hand is a little faster. Bald donkey, don't try to steal the nun from me. Ha ha ha, there was no lack of meddlesome people. Many people watching from the side could not help but laugh. Hearing this, Shun Xiaolong and Yilin wanted to find a hole to hide in. Shun Xiaolong knew that it was not a good idea to drag on like this. Although he could not bear it, he still decided to find a chance to knock her out. However, before he took action, suddenly a black shadow, like a rock spreading its wings, hit Yilin's back with a palm. The other party was still 10 feet away from him, but the strong wind that was stirred up by the other party's attack was already making it difficult for Shun Xiaolong to breathe. It could be seen how powerful this palm strike was. Even if it was him, he would have to avoid it, let alone this weak little nun. He wanted to save this little nun, but he thought of the purpose of his trip and the person who suddenly appeared was a friend, not an enemy. If he intervened, it would inevitably cause internal strife. While Xin Xiaolong was hesitating, Wu Shi on the other side saw the situation here. She could not help but turn pale with fright. She hurriedly used 2 moves to force back Morong Fu. She jumped into the air and stabbed the back of the mysterious person. At this time, it was too late to run in front of Elin, so she could only adopt this strategy of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. Suddenly, the mysterious person seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He directly dodged to the side, and then hit Wu Shi's side ribs with his palm. The whole process was smooth as if it had been planned. Wu Shi did not expect such a change. At this time, he instantly understood that the other party's attack on Elin was fake, and the real intention was to plot against him. He could not withdraw his sword in a hurry, so he could only raise his palm to meet the attack. Unfortunately, 80% of his martial arts was on the sword. How could he be the opponent of the other party in terms of palm techniques? He saw that the person suddenly withdrew his palm, causing him to hit the air, and a trace of blood could not help but flow from the corner of his mouth. The mysterious person took advantage of his turbulent qi and blood. The old strength had dissipated, and a new strength had not yet been generated, and suddenly hit him in the chest one after another. Wu Shi flew back while spurting blood, but the mysterious person kept attacking him at close range like maggots. If he had not successfully withdrawn his sword to defend himself, he would have been beaten to death by the other party. The mysterious person seemed to be afraid of his sword technique and hurriedly leaped back several feet, creating a sufficient safe distance. Wah! Wu Shi half-knelt on the ground, supporting himself with his sword, and spurted out a few mouthfuls of blood. If he had not learned the muscle-bone strengthening scripture a few days ago and a wisp of true qi to protect his heart meridian, perhaps he would have died on the spot after that round of attacks just now. Brother Linghu! Brother Linghu! Elin and Tian Boguang were shocked and hurriedly ran to his side, because they saw that the chief evil Wu Shi was seriously injured and worried about his counterattack before he died. Yang Jiyuan and the others did not dare to pursue and let the two return to Wu Shi's side. Wu Shi didn't have the time to respond to the two of them. Instead, he looked hatefully at the mysterious person from before. Ice True Energy, Great Sanyang Palm. Zhuo, you're a dignified grandmaster of your generation, yet you sneak attack a junior. You're too shameless. The blood he had just spat out on the ground had now formed ice particles, emitting a trace of cold air. At this time, the mysterious person took off the mask on his face, and sure enough, it was the leader of the 5 Mountain Sword faction, Zhuo Linshan. Zhuo Linshan snorted coldly. For traitors like you who sell their country for glory, everyone has the right to punish you. This is called enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. You. Wu Shi opened his mouth to say something, but unfortunately, a mouthful of blood gushed out, blocking the rest of his words. Brother Linghu, what's wrong with you? Quickly take this white cloud bear gall pill. Elin's beautiful face turned pale, and she hurriedly shook out a few pills from the porcelain bottle in her arms, and without counting the number, she sent them into his mouth. Wu Shi smiled bitterly. Now, he was the clearest about his injury, and it could be said that half of his body was already in the coffin. Although the spiritual medicine of the Hung Mountain sect was famous for healing injuries, it could not cure people who were bound to die. Seeing the state of her lover at this time, Elin's tears kept falling like pearls from a broken necklace. She, who had always been weak, could not help but angrily stare at Zhuo Linshan. Uncle Zhe, what you are doing is really not decent behavior. Zhuo Linshan sneered. Who do you think you are to criticize me? Elin's temper was originally soft, and when faced with this kind of situation, her face flushed red, but she did not know how to deal with it. Zhuo Linshan did not let her go. Everyone in the world knows that Wu Shi colluded with the enemy and committed treason, and is destined to go down in history. As a famous sect, your Hung Mountain sect did not want to subdue the demon, but instead came to help such a traitor. Could it be that your Hung Mountain sect also participated in Wu Shi's betrayal this time? No. Elin hurriedly waved her hand, This time I only came here alone. I do not represent the Hung Mountain sect. No, I want to say that Ling Hu, General Wu, is not that kind of person. Zhuo Linshan had always been strong, and as the leader of the Five Mountain Sword sect, how could a little girl like Lin win against him when it came to reasoning? Soon, she was led astray. Since it was not the Hung Mountain sect's instruction, it means that you, little nun, have abandoned yourself, Zhuo Linshan said resolutely, as if he was making a judgment. You are traveling with a notorious pervert of the martial arts world, Tian Boguang, a man and a woman alone. You really have no shame. You have abandoned yourself. At this time, everyone in the field looked at the sadhu next to her, pointing at him one by one. Is he the famous Tian Boguang? No wonder his saber is so fast. Tian Boguang is famous for his lightness skills and quick saber. Isn't he famous for being a pervert? This little nun looks gentle and quiet, but she has been traveling with Tian Boguang all the way. I don't know if she can keep her chastity. Are you stupid? Tian Boguang, doesn't it mean to strip naked? This little nun looks pure on the outside, but who knows how lewd she is in private. She has been with Tian Boguang all the way, unwilling to part with him. Most likely, she has been conquered by his skills in bed. Listening to the vulgar words of the people around her, Lin was on the verge of tears. I didn't. Unfortunately, her voice was quickly drowned out by the ridicule of the crowd. People would only believe what they wanted to believe, and no one cared about what she said. All of you shut up. Tian Boguang jumped out and shouted, Lin is my master now, and we are master and disciple. How can it be as dirty as they think? Speaking of which, he had become Lin's disciple because of Ling Hu Chang's teasing. At first, he was naturally indignant, but later on, he was happy with this identity. So what if we are master and disciple? During the day, master and disciple, and at night, brother and sister. A few years ago, there was also a master and disciple relationship. What were they called again? Yanghua and Xiao Long knew from the ancient tomb sect, right? Tian Boguang didn't expect that his explanation would not only be useless, but it would also make things worse. Seeing Lin's aggrieved tears kept falling, he felt a surge of heat in his chest. He didn't want Lin to suffer even the slightest bit. He jumped up a flight of stairs and pulled down his pants. Open your dog eyes wide and take a good look. Your grandpa. Am now a man without roots. I'm not as dirty as you think. Master is as pure as ice and as clean as jade. How could she be tainted by your gossip? One had to know that castration was an incomparable humiliation to a man. Normally, he minded this the most, but now that he saw his sweetheart being wronged, especially when he saw her tearful appearance, his heart warmed up, and he couldn't care less about anything else. Oh my God, he really was castrated. This is his retribution for plucking a flower. So this is what being castrated looks like. It's disgusting to look at. No one cared about what he said. A group of people just pointed at him and whispered. Zhuo Linshan snorted. Immoral. Shameless. I'll fight you. Tian Boguang was already on the verge of breaking down in shame. Hearing him say that, he exploded in an instant. He pulled up his pants and rushed towards Zhuo Linshan with his knife. Zhuo Linshan snorted. You overestimate yourself. Although Tian Boguang's martial arts were good, he was only second-rate in the Jianghu. At most, he was on par with Yu Songhai of the Qingxing faction. Yu Songhai's martial arts were far inferior to Zhuo Linshan's. The two had just exchanged a few moves when Tian Boguang spat out a mouthful of blood and flew backward. Everyone watching felt a chill in their hearts. Song Mountain faction's Zhuo Linshan is indeed worthy of his reputation. Among them, Murong Fu and Shen Xiaolong were the most shocked. After all, both of them boasted that their martial arts were good. However, seeing Zhuo Linshan's moves, they were completely unsure. Brother Tian, why did you do this? Wu Shi caught his breath and sighed at Tian Boguang, who had just fallen beside him. He didn't know whether it was a pity that he had exposed himself or that he shouldn't have come to save him. Lin hurried over. Tian Boguang, what's wrong? Seeing the concern on her face, Tian Boguang couldn't help but reveal a smile. I'm fine, I won't die. Before he finished speaking, He trembled all over and spat out a mouthful of blood. Wu Shi hurriedly reminded him, "Be careful of his cold qi. You must force out the cold poison." Tian Buguang nodded. At this time, he had no time to speak and hurriedly began to heal his injuries. Unfortunately, the people around them wouldn't give them a chance. Kill the traitor Wu Shi. Kill the pervert Tian Buguang. A group of people brandished their weapons and charged at them. At this time, the three people had already lost their ability to fight. Murong Fu, Shun Xiaolong, and the others respected their status and did not participate. Looking at the frail figure of Yilin standing in front of him, Shun Xiaolong couldn't bear to do it. However, the crowd was so fanatical that he couldn't do anything. Just as her figure was about to be submerged in the crowd, suddenly an invisible wave of air spread out. The group of people that rushed over were shaken back one by one. The others didn't know what was going on, but Zuolinchan, Murong Fu, Shin Xiaolong, and the other masters on the scene had already discovered the target. A figure slowly descended from midair. Chapter of 5,000 words. Chapter 17:03. The group of people's expressions changed. Many people here could jump into the air and then descend, but none of them could do it as slowly as the other party did. Not to mention that mysterious chi wave just now, which shook the dozens of people who were charging forward and forced them to retreat one after another. This kind of power was a little too terrifying. Everyone fixed their eyes on him and saw that he was a young man in a green robe. Unfortunately, his appearance was ordinary and no one seemed to know him. The person who came was naturally Song Qing-shu. He and Ren Yingying saw the fire in the king of Shu's mansion and knew that something had happened here. They rushed all the way here and just happened to see a group of people rushing towards Yilin, so they had to take action. Of course, he did not reveal his original face. After all, the Golden Snake Battalion was now fighting against the Qing Army South. If news of his appearance in Sichuan got out, it would inevitably cause a diplomatic storm. It did not matter if he revealed his identity to Yilin and Tian Buguang. After all, they were of low status and had no right to speak in Jianghu. But now there were so many officials of the Southern Song dynasty and a sect leader like Zuolinchan, so they could not let their guard down. "Who are you?" Murong Fu and Zuolinchan had too many thoughts and could not figure out each other's background. They were surprised and doubtful, but Shun Xiaolong went forward and asked directly. Song Qing-shu replied indifferently, "I'm a mountain commoner, not worth mentioning. Why did you stop us from killing the traitor?" Shun Xiaolong asked. "Traitor?" Song Qing-shu shook his head. "I don't know who the traitor is. I only saw that you wanted to kill a kind little nun." At this time, Zuolinchan finally spoke. "This little nun is willing to degenerate herself. She's in cahoots with traitors and rapists. Naturally, she deserves to die." Song Qing-shu remained calm and collected. "There are many strange things that happened in Sichuan. We still need to investigate carefully. How can we come to a conclusion so easily?" He remembered that Zuolinchan had suffered serious internal injuries before. How could he recover so quickly? Looking at his spirit, chi, and spirit, he seemed to be better than before. Zuolinchan suddenly became angry. Was she committed treason and Tian Buguang raped? The world knows that this little nun was with them. Everyone here saw it with their own eyes. What else is there to investigate? Who says the world knows? Song Qing-shu chuckled. "I don't." Hearing this, Zuolinchan laughed angrily. "So you're here to make fun of me? So what if I am?" Song Qing-shu's careless reply almost made him faint. At this moment, Murong Fu also spoke. "Mister, you should think this through carefully. If you act on impulse, you might very well become the enemy of the entire world." Song Qing-shu shook his head. "I'm not being impulsive. You can't represent the whole world." Yang Jiyuan also joined in the condemnation. "Don't underestimate the heroes of the world just because you are strong in martial arts. There's so many people here. How many can you block?" Song Qing-shu's words almost choked him to death. Yang Jiyuan also joined in the condemnation. "Don't underestimate the heroes of the world just because you're strong in martial arts. There's so many people here. How many can you block? Looking at him, Song Qing-shu easily guessed from his appearance and attire. You're Yang Jiyuan? Yang Jiyuan was shocked. You know me? Song Qing-shu nodded, then shook his head. I've heard of your name. Yang Jiyuan was secretly happy. Sir, do you have some relationship with the Yang family? If the other party was really related to the Yang family, with such a top master as a backer, plus the power of the Yang family, wouldn't he be able to do whatever he wanted in Sichuan in the future? We do have some relationship. Song Qing-shu thought about how to phrase it. To some extent, your big brother and I are kindred spirits. Yang Jiyuan naturally could not understand the meaning of kindred spirits, but he understood that the other party was related to his big brother. His heart sank. This was not good. Zhuo Linchan could not hold back his anger at this time, and said in a deep voice, since you're so confident in your martial arts, then I'd like to experience it. Although the martial arts and Qing Gong that the other party had just shown were shocking, they were not at an untouchable level. In addition, he was very confident in his ice, true Qi, and rich martial arts experience, so he did not think that he would lose to him. Song Qing-shu sighed. In the end, we still have to talk with our fists, so why talk so much nonsense at the beginning? Zhuo Linchan snorted, directly pulled out an iron sword, and rushed over. He was a little afraid of the internal energy that the other party had just shown, so he did not dare to fight with internal energy right from the beginning. He had already practiced the Song Mountain swordsmanship to perfection. This sword flower was 70% real and 30% fake, with 13 kinds of powerful moves hidden, which could be used to attack or defend. The surrounding masters secretly nodded, thinking that Zhuo Linchan deserved to be the world-famous Five Mountain Alliance master. His attainments in swordsmanship were really at the level of a master. Song Qing-shu secretly shook his head. At his level of cultivation, most of the swordsmanship in the world were full of flaws. The other party did not know his true identity, so he rashly attacked. If he really wanted to, he could seriously injure him in one move. But if he showed it like that, it would be too shocking. Zhuo Linchan was already a top master in this world. If he was defeated in one move, even if he wore a mask, it would be easy to guess his identity. Of course, if he let him slowly fight with him, he did not have the patience, so he stretched out his finger and flicked the tip of the sword away. The tip of the sword lost its accuracy, and all the sword moves after that lost their meaning. Zhuo Linchan only felt that the hand between his thumb and forefinger was numb, and he almost couldn't hold the long sword in his hand. He could not help but be shocked, but his reaction was also fast. He directly used his other hand to attack his opponent with the great Songyang palm, at the same time mixed with the ice Xinqi. The two exchanged several moves in the blink of an eye, and Zhuo Linchan saw an opportunity to retreat, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Good. The surrounding onlookers only saw Zhuo Linchan playing with his sword and waving his palm, and the whole field was filled with his figure. The opponent was like a small boat in a raging sea that could sink at any time, so they all cheered for Zhuo Linchan. Only Morong Fu and Shun Xiaolong frowned inwardly. Experts like them were naturally able to see that Zhuo Linchan had the upper hand on the surface, but in reality, he had used all of his skills in order to narrowly survive this calamity. Since when did such a supermaster appear in the martial arts world? Morong Fu's heart was a little heavy. In the early years, he was as famous as Qiao Feng. Qiao Feng of the north and Morong of the south were awe-inspiring, but he was continuously defeated by Qiao Feng, Song Qing-shu, and later Wu Shi, which was a big blow to him. Originally, he thought that apart from these few people who defied the natural order, he could still be ranked among the top masters. Who knew that now there would be an unfathomable, mysterious master? Shun Xiaolong also frowned. He did not participate in the attack on Yilin's team, but now he took the initiative to step forward and said, "Your Excellency's martial arts are high, but this time we are eliminating traitors for the country. Even if we know it's impossible, we still have to do it." After saying that, he also waved his long sword to attack. Song Qing-shu saw that his sword technique was elegant and could not help but praise, "Good sword technique." Morong Fu knew that Shun Xiaolong alone was no match for this mysterious man. He was worried that he would be defeated one by one, so he immediately joined in the battle. As long as I can kill the traitors, Murong Fu doesn't care about the reputation of the martial arts world. Song Qing-shu replied sarcastically, Your Excellency can always stand on the moral high ground. Murong Fu's old face turned red, but he did not argue. He just displayed the Murong family's martial arts to his heart's content, and even mixed in the 18 dragons subduing palms to attack. Zhuo had just fought with him, so he knew how terrifying he was. He gritted his teeth and joined in the battle, hoping to take down the opponent with the help of the three masters. The four quickly became a mess, but soon Murong Fu and the others cried out in surprise. Why are you attacking me? He's borrowing my strength to fight. Isn't this your Murong family's Big Dipper? It's not Big Dipper, but more like the Ming Dynasty's Heaven and Earth Great Shift. No, I think his finger technique is more like Shaolin 72 ultimate skills. With Song Qing-shu's current cultivation, he could already turn something rotten into something magical. Even if he did not reveal his original martial arts, he could display some of the martial arts of his opponents. Although he did not know the specific mental cultivation method, he could still imitate it to 70 to 80% similar and beat the three people in front of him until they complained incessantly. But these people were the world's top masters, not to mention the three of them working together. One must know that Murong Fu and Yu Tanji were enough to make Xiao Feng admit that he was no match for Murong Fu. Now that Murong Fu had obtained the 18 dragon subduing palms, he was even better than Xiao Feng at that time. Zhuo Chan, who was at the Grandmaster level, was no weaker than Yu Tanji. If he added his experience and martial arts moves, he would be far superior to Xiao Feng. Not to mention that there was now the addition of the Three Emotions Taoist, who was highly skilled in martial arts. Song Qing-shu secretly frowned. It was not difficult to defeat the three of them, but if he did not reveal his own martial arts, it would not be so easy to defeat them. At this moment, a simple and honest voice suddenly came from the door. Master, who is this person? Hearing this voice, Zhuo Chan was overjoyed and hurriedly shouted, This person is an accomplice of the traitor. Quickly kill him. Song Qing-shu was startled and looked towards the source of the voice. He saw a young man with disheveled hair and a sincere and honest face appear at the entrance of the courtyard. It was Shi Patian, whom he had met once before. He had participated in the Golden Snake meeting, and at that time, he seemed to be representing the Song Mountain sect. It was said that he was saved by Zhuo Chan on the road, and then taught him martial arts, so he called Zhuo Chan his master. Song Qing-shu was clear that with Zhuo Chan's martial arts, how could he be qualified to be Shi Potion's master? Presumably, Shi Potion's nature was simple, and the surnames we used some means to buy his heart. But it cannot be said that Zhuo Chan was useless. Shi Potion's Arhut demon subduing Kung Fu had been practiced to an unprecedented level, and coupled with the coincidental combination of yin and yang, his internal energy could be said to be rare in the world. But other than internal energy, his other martial arts were unbearably crude, and Zhuo Chan just happened to be able to teach him brilliant sword art and martial arts, giving birth to the world's top supermaster. Hey, his breath is a little strange. But Song Qing-shu was keenly aware that Shi Patian at this time was very different from when he met him at the Golden Snake camp, as if he was hiding a power that even he was a little afraid of. Chapter 1704. Everyone present was aghast. The wind, generated by the punch, had wrinkled the faces of the three masters. How exaggerated was this? It should be known that this punch was not aimed at the three of them. The three of them were only brushed by the side. This young man looked very simple and honest. Who would have thought that his martial arts was so terrifying? He had only taken one step, but he had already crossed dozens of feet and arrived in front of the enemy. That terrifying punch seemed to have sucked up all the air around him. It was obviously a destructive force, but the whole courtyard fell into a momentary silence. Everyone could only see their mouths opening and closing, but they couldn't hear what the people around them were saying. Song Qing-shu's expression was also solemn. It should be known that the most important basis to judge whether a person's martial arts was good or not was his technique. The strength of a person with the lowest level could be ignored, so there was naturally no need to discuss it. For people with slightly higher martial arts, whether it was a sword or a punch, they could create a large gust of wind. It looked scary, but in fact, a large amount of internal energy was wasted. They couldn't compare to the masters of the same level who could concentrate most of their internal energy into one point. However, if one's martial arts reached a higher level, it would be very different. As the saying goes, the birth of a saint must be accompanied by a natural phenomenon. The other party could affect the surrounding environment with just a lift of his hand. This was not because his Zhen Qi was leaking out, but because his Zhen Qi was so terrifying that it could affect the surrounding environment. Looking at the whole Jianghu, there were very few people who could reach this level. Unexpectedly, Shi Patian was actually one of them. Back in the Golden Snake Convention, he was clearly not this powerful. Now, it could be said that he had made a qualitative leap. Why? Song Qingshu's thoughts were like lightning. However, the fist had already arrived in front of him. He looked solemn and slowly raised his hand. Although he moved later, it arrived first. He raised his palm to meet the attack. With a loud bang, a terrifying wave of qi spread out. Morong Fu, Zuolinshan, and the others beside him were shaken a few times. Those who were further away were even more embarrassed. One by one, they fell down with all 4 feet in the air. Song Qingshu took advantage of the opportunity to retreat a distance of 10 feet and stood in front of Wu Shi and the others, helping them to neutralize the terrifying shock wave. After all, these people were seriously injured at this moment. If they were swept by the palm wind, they might directly die. Just now, when Song Qingshu appeared to block Zuolinshan and the others, Ren Ying ran to Wu Shi and Yilin to check on their injuries. Seeing her lover retreating to her side, she couldn't help but say worriedly, "They won't be able to hold on much longer." Song Qingshu looked back and saw that Wu Shi's face was as pale as gold paper, and Tian Boguang's eyebrows and beard were covered with a layer of ice. He knew that if he delayed any longer, even if the almighty immortal came, he could not save them. After pondering for a moment, he made a decision. Although he wanted to know what had happened to Shi Patian, it was more important to save him first. Therefore, he grabbed the crowd and leaped out of the king of Shu's mansion. "Don't you dare leave, you thief!" Zuolinshan and the others hurriedly chased after him. Shi Patian was stunned for a moment, seeing that everyone was chasing after him. Although he didn't know what was going on, he still followed along. Although he moved a little late, he crossed dozens of feet with one step and soon overtook the others. Seeing that the mysterious man was getting further and further away, Morong Fu, Zuolinshan, and the others all stopped in their tracks. However, seeing that Shi Patian was so fierce, they all summoned their fighting spirit and followed him. With Song Qingshu's lightness skill, it would not be a problem for him to shake off Morong Fu and Zuolinshan, even if he was carrying a group of people. However, now that there was Shi Patian, his speed was too shocking. Song Qingshu alone could easily shake him off, but now he also had Ren Ying, Wu Shi, Yilin, and Tian Boguang with him, a total of 4 people, so it was naturally difficult to shake off this tail. However, he also reacted quickly. Taking advantage of a turn to block the other party's line of sight, he jumped onto a big tree with a few people and used the dense leaves to hide everyone's figures. Soon, a group of people caught up, but did not discover their existence and continued to chase into the distance. "Big brother Linghu, what's wrong?" Yilin's voice carried a bit of a sob. "Chill." Song Qingshu hurriedly stopped her. "Someone is coming back." At the same time, he had a sigh that people's lives were really different. At this time, Tian Boguang was obviously also seriously injured, but Yilin did not even look at him. However, this did not mean that Yilin had any bad intentions, but that this was human nature. Of course, the first reaction would be related to the people they cared about the most. As for Tian Boguang, he was just like those spare tires in the future. Naturally, it would be difficult for him to get the favor of the goddess. This is a kind of retribution for the evil he did years ago. Song Qingshu speculated, not without malice. At this time, Sherpatian and the others had already returned. Many people dejectedly said, "Mother of asterisk her, he ran really fast." Running so fast while carrying people, this person's lightness skill is really F asterisk king awesome. Young Hero Sher's lightness skill is also amazing. If it weren't for the fact that there are too many buildings in this city, that person would definitely not be able to run away. Young Hero Sher is still the best. With one punch, he beat that guy into running away. Sherpatian hurriedly waved his hand and said, "That person's martial arts is very high, not inferior to mine." The others jeered in a few words. "Young hero, don't be modest. Everyone saw you beat him with one punch. How can it be fake?" Sherpatian originally wanted to explain that just now, the other party retreated because he wanted to resolve the aftermath in front of Wu Shi and the others. But the group of people kept complimenting him, making him unable to find a chance to interrupt. He was not good with words, so in the end, he could only smile foolishly. On the side, Murong Fu's face was a little ugly. After all, he was a person that the dignified Nan Murong and several other great experts could not do anything to, but he was beaten away by this silly boy with one punch, which really made him lose face. Although Zhuolong Chan was also a little depressed, this person was his nominal disciple, so he could be considered to have benefited from it. As for the three emotions Taoist priest, he did not care about this and did not have any reaction. Only Murong Fu wanted to use this opportunity to buy people's hearts, but who knew that the limelight would be stolen by Sherpatian. Wu Shi is now seriously injured and won't live for long. We will immediately announce to the public that he has been executed and clean up the remnants of Wu Shi's party. Murong Fu knew that in terms of martial arts, he might not be able to compare, so he could only turn the tables on the officialdom that he was better at. But that mysterious person's martial arts is so high. What if Wu Shi survives? Someone raised a doubt. Murong Fu sneered and said, "So what if he survives? When the time comes, the general situation will be set. What can a traitor like him do?" Prince Murong is really wise, as expected of the descendant of Hunan Commandery King. Hearing the group of people bragging, Murong Fu's dark face finally showed a trace of a smile. "Let's go back to the Shu King's mansion and arrange the follow-up matters." The group of people nodded and quickly surrounded him and left. After everyone left, Rening said with some indignation, "These people really have eyes but can't see. Although Sherpatian's martial arts is high, how can he be a match for you? If it weren't for saving us, you could have defeated him with one hand." Song Qing Shu faintly smiled. "Why do you need to care about the gossip of these people? Moreover, aren't you exaggerating a bit too much? Sherpatian's current cultivation has already reached the pinnacle of the world, and it won't be easy to defeat him with just one hand." At this time, Wu Shi slowly opened his eyes and looked at the two people in a daze. "Ying, is that you?" Ren Ying faintly sighed and took off her mask, revealing a bright and beautiful face. "Young Master Linghu, I am now Lady Song." Hearing his words, Wu Shi violently coughed a few times. After a long time, he said with a bitter smile, "That's right, I was rude." Then he turned around and said, "Then this must be Song Qing Shu." Song Qing Shu didn't mind the fact that Linghu who called him by his name. He removed his mask and said, "Brother Linghu, long time no see." Linghu Chong sighed. "I didn't expect to be saved by you again." Song Qing Shu said with a smile, "Brother Linghu, don't feel burdened. I saved you because I wanted something. I know what you want to ask, cough, cough." Halfway through his words, he couldn't help but violently cough again. The blood he coughed out was emitting a trace of cold air. Elin hurriedly said, "Prince Song, can you save Brother Linghu first?" Song Qing Shu nodded, knowing that his injury couldn't be delayed any longer. He grabbed their shoulders and used Qing Gong to leave. The whole city of Chengdu was full of people who hated Wu Shi, a traitor. Now that he was under the control of Murong Fu, Yang Jiyuan, and the others, it was too dangerous to stay in the city. After thinking about it, the most suitable place to treat his injury was the Mirror Lake outside the city. Seeing him return, the The people on the Mirror Lake immediately came out to welcome him warmly. After all, he had saved their lives before. In addition, he had an ambiguous relationship with the mistress, so everyone had already regarded him as half a master. At this time, Ling Huchong had already fallen into a coma. He had been attacked by Zhuo Linshan, so his injury was more serious than Tian Boguang's, who had been directly hit by the ice chi. However, Tian Boguang's internal energy was much weaker than Ling Huchong's, so in the end, the degree of danger was about the same. Song Qingshu thought that if he saved Ling Huchong first, Tian Boguang would most likely kneel. If he saved Tian Boguang first, his head wasn't injured. In the end, he simply saved both of them together. He helped the two of them to sit cross-legged on the bed. Song Qingshu sat behind the two of them, pressed the major acupoints on their backs, and began to help them treat their injuries. Half of their injuries were caused by the shock to their internal organs and meridians, and the other half was caused by the ice chi. Therefore, they had to first expel the ice chi from their bodies to slowly heal their internal injuries. Fortunately, Song Qingshu's cultivation had reached an incredible level. Otherwise, if he were to absorb the ice chi from both of them at the same time, he would easily be frozen into a popsicle. In the original work, Ren Wuxing was ambushed by Zhuo Linshan's ice chi. As a result, Ling Huchong, Xiang Wentian, and Ren Yingying had to work together to absorb the ice chi from his body for several hours. In the end, all of them had turned into ice sculptures. Elin was fidgeting restlessly on the side. She kept fiddling with the Buddhist beads in her hand and muttering, "Merciful and pessimistic Bodhisattva, please protect Brother Linghu and keep him safe. Elin is willing to shorten her life by 10 years. No, 20 years in exchange for..." Chapter 17:05. Ren Yingying jumped in fright and hastily pulled Elin to the side. "Don't worry, Brother Song will save him. Don't make such a vow randomly." Elin shook her head. "As long as Brother Linghu is well, it doesn't matter if my life is shortened by 20 years. Seeing the tears in Elin's eyes, Ren Yingying could not help but be speechless. After a long time, she faintly sighed. Love was the most hurtful thing. Song Qingshu, on the other hand, had a strange expression on his face. Did Elin, this little nun, forget that Tian Boguang was also seriously injured? Moreover, he did not hesitate to self-destruct for her sake. However, there was no such thing as love. He could only express sympathy for Tian Boguang. In the end, Ren Yingying still pulled Elin out on the grounds of not wanting to disturb the treatment. Elin did not hesitate at all when she heard that it might affect Ling Huchong's treatment. Song Qingshu finally calmed down and circulated his internal energy to help the two dispel the ice-cold jinchi. After several hours, he withdrew his hand from Tian Boguang's back. Although both of them were seriously injured, Tian Boguang's injuries appeared serious only because his internal energy was too low. Zhuo Linshan's attack on him was completely incomparable to Ling Huchong's. It must be known that his sneak attack on Ling Huchong was a deliberate and well-prepared thunderous strike. Because he was afraid of his opponent's swordsmanship, once he gained the upper hand, he completely aimed to kill his opponent. If not for Ling Huchong practicing the I Jin Jing and using the 9 strategies beyond the swords to force him back at the critical moment, he would probably have died long ago. At this time, Tian Boguang slowly opened his eyes. "Many thanks to King Qi for saving my life." His voice did not contain the joy of being saved. On the contrary, it was filled with loneliness. Presumably, he had heard Elin's words. Song Qingshu replied, "Originally, I shouldn't have saved you when you committed evil deeds in your early years, but letting you die would be letting you off too lightly. You should use the rest of your life to do good deeds to make up for your past sins." Tian Boguang smiled bitterly. "Now that I am neither a man nor a woman, I deserve it. However, how can it compare to the harm I caused to those women in the past? Rest assured, King Qi, I will use the rest of my life to turn over a new leaf and make up for my past mistakes." Putting down the butcher's knife and becoming a Buddha was easy to say, but putting down the butcher's knife was easier said than done. The reason why Tian Boguang had such a huge change was because he had his thing cut off by Master Bujia. The other reason was that he had fallen in love with Lin and tasted the bitterness of love. Both were indispensable. Song Qingshu also sighed and comforted him. That's how the world is. The person you like often doesn't like you. You should take it easy. Tian Boguang nodded in agreement. I won't disturb you from healing him. Then he went to the room next door to rest and recuperate with a lonely look on his face. Song Qingshu continued to help Ling Hu Chong heal his injuries. After another 2 hours, he finally managed to dissolve the cold Jun Qi in his body. At this time, the sky was already faintly turning white. By this time, Ling Hu Chong had already woken up. After hesitating for a while, he said with difficulty, "Thank you very much." For a long time, he had regarded Song Qingshu as his irreconcilable enemy. He did not expect that one day he would actually need Song Qingshu's help. At the same time, he had to thank him. However, Ling Hu Chong was a gentleman. Even though he felt uncomfortable, he still expressed his gratitude. Song Qingshu shook his head. "Brother Ling Hu, you don't have to be so polite." At this time, Lin and the others received the news and hurried over. Seeing that Ling Hu Chong had woken up, they couldn't help but choke with sobs. "Big brother Ling Hu." Ling Hu Chong also revealed a trace of a smile. "Junior sister Lin." Lin hurriedly looked at Song Qingshu. "Prince Song, is big brother Ling Hu Chong all right now?" Song Qingshu shook his head. "How could it be so easy? I spent an entire night to purge the cold Jin Qi from his body. As for the internal injuries he sustained in his meridians and organs, I still haven't started treating them." Lin cried out in surprise. Her small face was filled with worry and disappointment. Ling Hu Chong smiled bitterly. "Junior sister Lin, don't make things difficult for Song. Young master, I was seriously injured. Half of my body is already buried in the ground. If it wasn't for him, I'm afraid it would have been difficult for me to see you again. Zuelinshan's cold Jin Qi is extremely insidious. The sneak attack from before penetrated deep into my meridians. In this world, I'm afraid that only he, who has a divine cultivation, can purge the terrifying cold poison in my body in one night." He was worried that Lin didn't understand the difficulties involved, so he deliberately explained to her. However, when he finished, he felt both admiration and disappointment. He had always regarded Zuelinshan as an imaginary enemy. He thought that after practicing the muscle bone strengthening scripture, he would be able to compete with him. However, he didn't expect that the gap between their strength would become so wide that he might not even be able to see his back now. This was human nature. When the level of both sides was about the same, jealousy and rivalry would arise. However, once the gap was too big, all that was left was admiration and admiration. Lin opened her mouth wide. "I didn't know you were so powerful. Lin's knowledge is shallow. I hope Prince Song won't blame me." Song Qingshu shook his head. Naturally, he wouldn't argue with her. Instead, he looked at Ling Hu Chong and asked a topic that interested him. "Brother Ling Hu, although I know that you need to rest now, can I ask you a few questions?" Ling Hu Chong nodded. With Lin's help, he leaned back against the headboard. "Go ahead. Is it true that you've committed treason and proclaimed yourself the king of Shu?" Song Qingshu asked. Ling Hu Chong nodded. "Yes." Ren Ying exclaimed. She had always thought that there must be some misunderstanding. She didn't expect him to admit it himself. Song Qingshu also frowned. "But with brother Ling Hu's character, I don't think he would do such a thing." Ling Hu Chong let out a long sigh. "I didn't expect that the only person in the world who is willing to believe in me is you." Although he didn't say it out loud, everyone knew what he meant. The whole world regarded him as a traitor. Only his former rival in love believed him. Song Qingshu shook his head. "It's not just me. Ying believes in you, too. Lin, Tian Boguang, and all of them believe in you." "Thank you, Sister Lin." Ling Hu Chong paused and looked at Ren Ying. After a while, he continued, "Thank you, Lady Song." Ren Ying looked a little embarrassed, but she knew that he needed time to heal the wound at his heart. After calming himself down, Ling Hu Chong continued. A few months ago, Jia Dao's men suddenly came to me. They told me that they had found out who I was and knew that I, Ling Hu Chong, was pretending to be Wu Shi. Song Qingshu nodded secretly. He could hide his identity for a while, but he couldn't hide it forever. Both Han Xingzhou and Jia Dao were cunning people. They would find out who he really was sooner or later. Last time, Jia Dao's men were defeated in the Kung Fu competition. I thought he sent someone here to replace me. Ling Hu Chong smiled, but I didn't care. The reason why I came to Sichuan was to compete with you, Brother Song. But when I learned that you were married, I knew I couldn't do anything about it. So, I stopped thinking about it. Ren Yingying said apologetically, Young Master Ling Hu, I and my daughter have done you wrong. Back then, when Ren Wuxing defeated Dongfang Bubi and regained his position as the cult master, Ling Hu Chong had contributed greatly to it. In the end, Ren Wuxing betrothed his daughter to Song Qingshu, who was even more powerful than him. As for Ren Yingying herself, she felt very bad for throwing herself into the arms of another man. Ling Hu Chong shook his head lightly. There's nothing to be sorry about. Relationships are always like this. The person you like might not like you back. Obviously, he had heard what Song Qingshu had said to comfort Tian Buowang, so he said it as if it had happened to him. Ren Yingying, who was quick-witted, keenly sensed that Ling Hu Chong might not be referring to her. After spending so much time with him, she naturally knew who Ling Hu Chong was. Those people didn't expose me. Instead, they wanted me to make a deal with them. They wanted me to give them the official seal, and they would still let me enjoy all the benefits of a high position here. Ling Hu Chong sneered, but I'm not the kind of person who covets wealth and power. Plus, I was already a little disheartened and wanted to leave. Of course, I wouldn't agree to such an ambiguous handover. Who knew that the other party would suddenly take out the personal belongings of mistress and junior sister? At this point, a trace of anger flashed across Ling Hu Chong's face, triggering the injuries in his body. He could not help but cough violently. Elin, who was beside him, hurriedly handed him a glass of water. At the same time, she gently patted his back to soothe him. Ling Hu Chong smiled at her gratefully and said, Those two items are very much liked by mistress and junior sister. They have been carefully protecting them. They definitely wouldn't accidentally drop them. At that time, my heart was shocked and cold. I knew that something must have happened to them. Sure enough, that person told me that mistress and junior sister are now in their hands. If they don't cooperate with them, not only will they lose their lives, but they will also be inhumanely humiliated. Ling Hu Chong clenched his fists tightly. How could he not be angry when his most respected mistress and his most beloved childhood sweetheart were in such danger? These people are really shameless. Ren Yingying and Elin were filled with righteous indignation when they heard this, but Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. Although he was shameless, he had grasped Ling Hu Chong's weak spot, making him unable to resist at all. As expected, Ling Hu Chong said in a deep voice, In order to prevent them from being humiliated, I had to agree for the time being. They took away my official seal and put me under house arrest in the mansion. There were people watching me day and night, not allowing me to contact the outside world. It was not until later, when they moved me to the King of Shu's mansion, that I vaguely learned that they had committed treason in my name. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly when he saw Ling Hu Chong's angry look. Normally, Ling Hu Chong was quite smart and quick-witted, but when it came to Yu Shan, his intelligence would plummet. If he cooperated with the enemy like this, would the enemy let Yu Shan and her mother go? However, there was no need to criticize him now. Song Qingshu had to admire Jia Dao's ruthlessness. In order to bring down Han Xingzhou, he had found out that there was something wrong with Wu Shi's identity, but he had been holding back and waiting for such a big move. Han Xingzhou was probably doomed this time. He had gambled with the fate of the Southern Song dynasty and sacrificed the lives of so many soldiers and people. No wonder he was one of the most treacherous ministers in history. Song Qingshu secretly became vigilant. He had to be very careful when he became his enemy in the future. After chatting for a while, Ling Hu Chong's eyelids began to droop. Knowing that he was seriously injured and weak, he didn't disturb him and let him rest. Yilin volunteered to stay and take care of him. Song Qingshu walked to the deck, and Ren Yingying took out a handkerchief to wipe the fine sweat on his forehead. "Thank you for your hard work tonight." Song Qingshu held her little hand and sighed. "Only my own women know how to care for me. Look at that Yilin. I saved the man of her dreams, but she only has eyes for Ling Hu Chong. She didn't even say a word of thanks." Ren Yingying was so shy that she subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand. Unfortunately, she didn't succeed, so she just let him be. "Yilin is so pitiful. Don't tell me you also have feelings for her." Chapter 1706. Ren Yingying blushed and spat. "What nonsense are you talking about? A monk and a nun aren't a couple." "Who says we're not a couple? If you become a nun, I'll become a monk." Song Qingshu hugged Ren Yingying in his arms and said shamelessly. Ren Yingying's face became even more beautiful. She pursed her lips and said with a smile, "If you want to be a monk, you can do it yourself. I don't want to be a nun." The two of them flirted with each other on the deck. After an unknown amount of time, a teasing voice suddenly came from behind them. "Two immortal couples, you really make others envious." Ren Yingying's skin was already tender. At this moment, she was like a startled rabbit when someone bumped into her. She pushed her lover away and pretended to look at the river in the distance. However, the slight rise and fall of her chest showed that she was not so calm at the moment. Song Qingshu turned his head and saw Ruan Xingzhu standing there with a sweet smile on her face. The wind from the river fluttered her dress, accentuating her alluring figure. She smiled before she said anything. She was still as charming as ever. However, Song Qingshu was still keenly aware of the faint exhaustion between her brows. "Madam, you came back so early. Has everything been arranged properly?" Ruan Xingzhu knew what he was asking and shook her head. "Things have changed. Yang Jian, Murong Fu, and the others have become the great heroes who killed the traitor and pacified the rebellion. The power of the entire Sichuan is divided and controlled by them. Now that they're in the limelight and have the right to speak, it's not a good time for me to jump out and expose him for killing my brother. Moreover, ordinary people won't believe that the new hero is a traitor." Song Qingshu nodded. "That's right. If you expose his true colors now, he will most likely bite back. So I can only hide first and slowly collect all the useful evidence. At the critical moment, I'll ruin his reputation." Ruan Xingzhu bit her lips and said hatefully, "This is a smart choice." Song Qingshu agreed with her. "Wait, you mentioned that they became the great heroes who killed the traitor and pacified the rebellion. What happened?" Ruan Xingzhu explained. "In the latter half of last night, Murong Fu announced to the world that they were sent by the imperial court to quell the rebellion. The traitor Wu, she has already been executed." "As expected." Song Qingshu nodded. "Murong Fu is smart this time. He made everything real. Even if the Southern Song Court doesn't want to, they have to admit his identity. In addition, he announced Wu Shi's death. Even if he appears alive again, the other party can say that he is Ling Hu Chong in disguise. It's very windy here. Why don't the two of you come to my room and have a seat?" Ruan Xingzhu invited. Song Qingshu knew that she had something to say, so he didn't refuse. Ren Yingying was hesitant to leave first, but her lover held her hand tightly. She felt warm in her heart and followed him. After entering the room, Ruan Xingzhu personally poured tea for them. From the corner of her eyes, she saw the two holding hands and couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. "You two are really a couple." Ren Yingying blushed and quickly withdrew her hand. "I'm afraid it's very difficult to find a man in this world who loves his wife so much." Ruan Xingzhu wasn't trying to flatter him. It had to be known that even in Song Qingshu's previous life, when he was in a relationship in the 70s and 80s, the couple might not even walk side by side, let alone hold hands. They would often walk one in front of the other, for fear of gossip. This world had a lot of etiquette, and it was even stricter in this aspect. It had to be known that the behavior just now was considered immoral in the mainstream values, so very few men would publicly display their affection. However, women were emotional. They enjoyed their lovers' love very much, and coupled with this harsh environment, they cherished this kind of behavior even more. However, Song Qingshu thought it was very normal. He smiled and said, "I don't deserve this title. There are still many good men in this world." "Is that so?" Ruan Xingzhu didn't argue. She couldn't help but think of her husband who had just been killed. Even though the two of them didn't have a very deep relationship, she still felt an irrepressible sadness. Ren Yingying saw her sadness and couldn't help but comfort her. "The dead are gone. My condolences, my lady." Because she had been imprisoned before, she still had a lot of resentment towards Ruan Xingzhu. However, after knowing what had happened to her family, as a woman, she empathized with Ruan Xingzhu, so her previous resentment gradually disappeared. "Thank you, Lady Run." Ruan Xingzhu smiled gratefully. She tucked her hair behind her ears and took the opportunity to wipe away the tears at the corners of her eyes. She quickly composed herself and asked, "Is Wuxi really dead?" After all, Wuxi had been promoted by Han Xingzhou. This time, she had come to Shu for Wuxi. However, because of what had happened in her family yesterday, she had made a series of mistakes. "I saved him. He's not dead, but he's seriously injured. However, in this situation, his identity is also dead." Song Qingshu roughly told her what had happened in the Shu King's mansion last night. Jia Sherdao is really behind all this. Ruan Xingzhu gritted her teeth. She belonged to Han Xingzhou's camp and had always been hostile to Jia Sherdao. Now that she heard that he was the culprit who had put her lord in such a difficult situation, how could she not be angry? Song Qingshu said with a faint smile, "Lady Rin thought that I was the one who had caused what happened in Sichuan." Ruan Xingzhu thought that she had suspected Song Qingshu at first and had tried everything to get close to him in order to spy on him. However, it turned out that he had nothing to do with it. Instead, they had accidentally. She had suffered a double loss. Thinking of that time, Ruan Xingzhu's heart skipped a beat. In order to hide her current expression, she hurriedly apologized to the two of them. "Previously, I used my narrow-mindedness to measure the heart of a gentleman. I have offended you, especially Lady Ren. I hereby apologize to you." Ren Yingying hurriedly helped her up. "Lady Ren, please get up. It's normal for us to use some tricks for our masters. If we were in each other's shoes, I would probably do the same thing." Ruan Xingzhu sighed and said, "I've long heard that the Sun Moon Church has always used high-handed policies to control their subordinates. Hundreds of thousands of members of the Sun Moon Church are afraid of the higher-ups of the Blackwood Cliff, except for one person who respects and loves the Saintess. Now, I finally understand how those people feel." The two women quickly began to flatter each other. After a while, Ren Yingying noticed that Ruan Xingzhu was holding back a yawn, so she stood up and said, "Lady Ren, there's been a sudden change in your family, and you haven't slept for the whole night. We won't disturb you anymore. Lady Ren, take this opportunity to rest." Ruan Xingzhu smiled and said, "Lady Ren, you haven't slept for the whole night either. If you don't mind, you can rest here." Ren Yingying was stunned, but Song Qingshu hurriedly said, "That won't do. Yingying's body is weak. I have to nurture her meridians." Both women blushed when they heard the words nurture meridians. Both Ruan Xingzhu and Ren Yingying knew what he meant by nurturing meridians. Even Ruan Xingzhu had personally experienced how he nurtured meridians. "If young master can't bear to part with Lady Ren, you can also stay here and rest." Ruan Xingzhu looked at him meaningfully. Song Qingshu's heart fluttered. He thought, what does she mean? There's only one bed in this room. Could it be? When he thought of that scene that would make countless men fantasize about it, he couldn't help but feel his blood boil. However, he didn't show anything on his face. Instead, he said with embarrassment, "I'm afraid that's not very good." Ruan Xingzhu giggled and said, "Young master, what are you thinking? I'm just joking with you. If I leave you here and word gets out, I'm afraid I won't be able to face anyone. What's more, Lady Rin is still here." Even after coming out of her room, Song Qingshu still had a gloomy expression. He thought, this woman really needs to be taught a lesson. She actually dared to tease me. Rin Ying, who was at the side, said with a faint smile, "If you want to stay there, I don't mind." Even though Song Qing-shu had never explicitly stated his relationship with Ruan Xingzhu, Rin Ying already knew. "Then let's go back together." Song Qing-shu raised his eyebrows. After he finished speaking, he pulled her hand and acted as if he wanted to go back. Rin Ying was so embarrassed that she hurriedly shook off his hand. "If you want to go back by yourself. Who wants to go with you?" Song Qing-shu burst into laughter. He deliberately said those words just now to expose her pretense of being magnanimous. Seeing her shy appearance, he couldn't help but feel pity for her. Amidst her surprised cry, he carried her in his arms and quickly returned to the room. "You've been cultivating for the whole night last night. You should take a good rest." Sensing his hurried footsteps, how could Rin Ying not understand what was going on? Her heart was thumping, and she said with a red face, "It's not like you don't know that my body is made of iron." As he spoke, he had already carried her and rolled onto the bed. After a series of rustling sounds, Rin Ying was like a tender and beautiful rose. She bit her lips and pouted. "There are people next door." After rescuing everyone back to the ship, for the convenience of treatment, they had arranged for them to stay in a few rooms next door. "Do you want to say that Ling Hu Chong is next door?" "That's just right." Song Qing-shu chuckled and lowered his head again. Although Rin Ying had always been pure, after being together with Song Qing-shu for such a long time, she naturally understood the thoughts of some men. Her eyes couldn't help but ripple, and she faintly pouted, "What a bad guy." However, although her tone was a little reproachful, she still gently stretched out her arms, hugged the man on top of her, and gently accepted him. In the next few days, Song Qing-shu used the solitary yang finger to treat Ling Hu Chong's internal injuries. His cultivation had already reached an incredible level, so using the solitary yang finger to save people wouldn't cause serious sequelae like what happened to Reverend Eating. Ling Hu Chong also had the protection of the Absorbing Star's Great Method and the I Ching Jing, and his internal energy was also extremely profound. Therefore, with Song Qing-shu's help, his injuries recovered much faster than expected. On this day, Song Qing-shu treated Ling Hu Chong for the last time and said, "From now on, Brother Ling Hu, cultivate every day to regulate your breathing. You should be fully recovered in 1 or 2 months." Ling Hu Chong sighed and said, "Brother Song is really powerful. With your help, not only did I survive such a serious injury, but I also recovered so quickly. It's really incredible." He was an open-minded person, and he had always been a little resentful. However, during this period of time, Song Qing-shu had spared no effort to help him recover. In addition, he had seen Rin Ying's sweet appearance with Song Qing-shu, and he knew that she had done it willingly, not because she had been forced. Therefore, he was convinced of his defeat and gradually let go of the grudge. Song Qing-shu said with a smile, "Brother Ling Hu, you don't have to be so polite. To a large extent, it's because of your good internal energy foundation that you recovered so quickly." The two chatted for a while, and Ling Hu Chong said, "Brother Song, I'll repay you for saving my life in the future. But now that I don't know whether Masteress and Shimmy are alive or dead, I have to leave to save them." Chapter 17:07. Ling Hu Chong cupped his hands and said, "Brother Song, please say it." Song Qing-shu came to the window and opened it. He looked at the surging river in the distance and said, "Mountains and rivers are far away. Falling flowers and wind hurt spring. Why not take pity on those in front of you?" Ling Hu Chong was moved. He opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. Song Qing-shu continued, "I know you've always been in love with Junior Sister, but she only treats you as an older brother, and she likes someone else. On the other hand, Elin has always been by your side and protected you." Ling Hu Chong smiled bitterly and said, "I have always treated Elin as a younger sister. Moreover, she is a Buddhist. How can I ruin her cultivation?" Song Qing-shu shook his head and said, "You don't have to lie to yourself. Elin's fate in the secular world is not over. If you say the word, she would have returned to secular life 10 times. Ling Hu Chong didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he sighed and said, "Feelings can't be forced. The person you like may not like you." Obviously, what Song Qing-shu said to Tian Boguang resonated with him. When Song Qing-shu left the room, he said lightly, "This is human nature. If you don't cherish what you have, you will regret it when you lose it." Ling Hu Chong sat by the window and suddenly thought of the time when he was with Ying. He couldn't forget about his junior apprentice sister. In the end, Ying was snatched away by Song Qing-shu. Only then did he understand what it meant to be heartbroken. Now that Lin is taking care of me, I'm also thinking about my junior apprentice sister. If she gets snatched away by someone else, would I regret it again? Early the next morning, Ling Hu Chong bid farewell to Song Qing-shu and the others. Because he was going to save his master's wife and junior sister, it was not good for them to keep him. However, because he had not fully recovered from his injuries, Lin suggested that they go with him to take care of him. Everyone thought that with his usual temperament, he would refuse, but unexpectedly, he readily agreed. Compared to Lin, who was overjoyed, Tian Boguang, who was at the side, was naturally dejected. Disheartened, he rejected Ling Hu Chong's invitation and decided to return to Mount Hung. Watching the three of them leave, Ren Ying faintly sighed, "I hope they can have a happy ending." Song Qing-shu naturally knew that she didn't mean the pervert Tian Boguang. He smiled and said, "Are you trying to make it up to Ling Hu Chong out of guilt?" Ren Ying didn't deny it and said, "After all, it's our fault. If he can be with Lin, I will feel less guilty." As she spoke, she couldn't help but raise her head and glare at him. "Speaking of which, isn't it all because of you?" Song Qing-shu chuckled and pulled her into his arms. He was quite pleased with himself for snatching her away. Cough, cough. At this moment, a light cough came from not far away. Ruan Xingzhu said with a faint smile, "The two of you are so affectionate. It's really enviable." Ren Ying was used to Xingzhu's teasing. She smiled and said, "If you like it, you can hug him. I don't mind." Xingzhu blushed. She was usually the one teasing Xingzhu. She didn't expect Xingzhu to fight back like this. She was caught unprepared and quickly changed the topic. "There's new information in the city." "Oh." Song Qing-shu was also very concerned about this. Xingzhu was half a local here, so she was usually the one going around to gather information. Xingzhu continued. Morong Fu announced that Wu Shi is dead, and the court appointed him as the Deputy Proclamation Commissioner of Sichuan. Previously, Yang Junyu and the others forged an imperial edict to appoint him as the Proclamation Commissioner. Now that the official imperial edict had been issued, it was changed to the higher-ranked Deputy Proclamation Commissioner. The reason why it was called Deputy Proclamation Commissioner was because the Song Court had to have ministers of the Prime Minister rank. Although Morong Fu had made great contributions, he still lacked experience, so he could only be the Deputy Proclamation Commissioner. However, Song Qing-shu frowned deeply. Isn't this imperial edict a little too fast? It had been less than 10 days since they raided the Shu Palace, and Sichuan was thousands of miles away from Linen. By the time the news reached Linen would have to react, and then the news would come back. No matter how fast it would still take about a month. However, the reality was that the official edict would arrive almost immediately. Xingzhu nodded and said, "I also think it's a bit strange. The whole thing is going so smoothly, as if it's all planned." Song Qing-shu thought of what Ling Hu Chong had said and suddenly realized Jia Shidao must have prepared everything and was ready to close the net in a few days. Shun Xiaolong and the other local mid-level officers were also planning to kill Wu Shi, so they ran into each other. "That's right. I heard Yang Jiyuan mention that he seemed to be on Jia Shidao's side." Xingzhu crossed her arms in front of her chest. She was the best spy under Han Xingzhou, so she was good at analyzing information. And, judging from the whole thing, Morong Fu probably knew about it long ago. I'm afraid only Shun Xiaolong, Yang Junyu, and the others were kept in the dark. They were hot-blooded, but they unknowingly became Jia Shidao's pawns. Ren Ying sighed and said, "I thought the disturbances in Jianghu were strange enough, but compared to these political veterans, they are nothing. No wonder she had such a feeling. Zuo Chan, who was so cunning, could be considered a big threat to the Sun Moon sect, but now he was just a dog of Jia Sherdao. Those who steal will be killed, and those who steal the country will be marquis. This has been the case since ancient times. Xingzhu smiled bitterly and continued. After dealing with the remnants of Wu Shi's party a few days ago, Shun Xiaolong, the three emotions Taoist, led the generals to take advantage of the situation and recover the four states. Murong Fu quickly agreed, and then Shun Xiaolong sent troops to recover the Shihe state. Zhang Lin and Li Jian recovered the Cheng state. Lu Changwo recovered the Jie state. Zhang Yi recovered the Feng state. And Sun Zhongrui recovered the Desangguan. Now Shun Xiaolong's troops have entered Du Ling and joined the local militia to attack the Jin army. The Jin general Wan Yin-Qin escaped, and Shun Xiaolong's troops entered the city. The soldiers and civilians cheered, and he asked to take advantage of the victory to attack Qin Long to contain the Jin army. The people mentioned were all mid-level officers in Sichuan. They had been holding back their anger for a long time, and now that they had been released, they were all like fierce tigers. What? Song Qingshu was startled. Previously, his biggest headache in the Jin court was being surrounded by enemies on all sides. Fortunately, Wu Shi's betrayal led to the end of the northern expedition in Sichuan. He sent the loyal army to the west and won a series of victories, holding all the passes leading out of Sichuan. Only then could he calmly mobilize the main force of the Jin to Huainan to deal with the main force of the Song army in the northern expedition. Unexpectedly, the Jin army in the west was defeated. If the war spread to Qinlong, the Jin defense in the west would collapse, and the main force in the east would be transferred over. Then, a series of chain reactions would occur, and the east might be counterattacked by the southern Song, especially now that the Jin army could be considered to have penetrated deep into the southern Song territory. If the southern Song court could not maintain the supply of soldiers and continue to pressure them, the main force of the Jin kingdom would not be able to retreat when the southern Song court launched a siege. Of course, Song Qingshu did not want to see this happen. He thought for a while and said, "Do you want to avenge your husband?" He planned to uncover Wu Shi's treason plot and cause chaos in Sichuan. However, he did not have any evidence, so he decided to start with Yang Jiyuan. To his surprise, Ruan Xingzhu shook her head and said, "Of course I want to avenge my husband, but not now. First, the time is not ripe, and I don't have enough evidence. Second, they're attacking the Jin kingdom in the north, which can relieve the pressure on Minister Han." Only then did Song Qingshu realize that all of Yang Jiyuan's actions represented Han Xingzhou's interests. Although she hated Yang Jiyuan to the core, she was happy to see the Sichuan army marching north to attack the Jin kingdom. Song Qingshu did not say anything else. After all, he could not tell her about his relationship with the Jin kingdom. After a casual chat, he returned to his room with Ren Yingying. "It seems that we have to find a way ourselves. But now we have no foundation in Sichuan, so we can't intervene," Ren Yingying said worriedly. Song Qingshu smiled confidently and said, "In fact, the way is very simple. Facing a complicated and sophisticated plot, the most direct way is to break it with force." "Break it with force?" Ren Yingying was confused. "What's the use of your husband's extraordinary abilities?" Song Qingshu said proudly, "If worse comes to worst, I can imitate what they did to Ling Huchong and put Murong Fu under house arrest. Then, I can do things according to his orders." Before, Jia Shidao's plot was completed with the help of many of his trusted subordinates. Although he was alone now, it was not difficult for him to achieve the same effect with his absolute martial arts. "Look at how smug you are." Although Ren Yingying said that, her eyes were full of admiration and love. After nightfall, Song Qingshu quietly left the Mirror Lake and sneaked into Chengdu City. He went all the way to Murong Fu's mansion. During this time, he had already investigated all the relevant information, so he naturally knew where Murong Fu's mansion was. After Wu Shi's rebellion, The entire Chengdu city seemed to be covered with a layer of a murderous atmosphere. At night, there was a curfew, but that could only stop ordinary people. It was impossible to stop the martial arts masters who came and went. When he arrived at Murong Fu's mansion, Song Qingshu couldn't help but be cautious. Now, that Murong Fu was the deputy Xian Fu. He could almost be regarded as the top military and political person in Sichuan, so the mansion was naturally heavily guarded. Song Qingshu carefully sneaked all the way to his study, thinking that he had to subdue Murong Fu in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, if other people were alerted, his next plan would not work. If people in Jianghu knew that someone planned to subdue the famous Murong Fu with one move, they would subconsciously think it was a fantasy. However, Song Qingshu now had great abilities, and he was in the dark while the enemy was in the light, so he was very confident. Hey, why is there someone else in the study? The candlelight in the room reflected the shadows of the two people. Song Qingshu slightly frowned and quietly hid under the eaves by the window, planning to figure out the situation first. Soon, Murong Fu's angry roar came from inside. Obviously, he was very emotional. Now the situation is good. Why did you ask them to retreat? Another voice sounded, and it was Yang Jiyuan. It's useless to shout at me. This is the Prime Minister's order. Chapter 1708. Murong Fu said, the Prime Minister is thousands of miles away from here. Maybe he doesn't know the result of the northern expedition yet. Yang Jiyuan interrupted him and said, I've made it very clear. The Prime Minister asked you to stay in seclusion and not attack without permission. Did you not understand? Yang Jiyuan took out a token and sneered. Could it be that you dare to go against the Prime Minister's will? Don't forget who made you the Deputy Xian Fu Deputy Envoy? I don't dare. Murong Fu hurriedly bowed. I don't think you dare. Yang Jiyuan snorted and walked away. After he left, Feng Poliu, Bao Budong, and a few other servants came in. Murong Fu couldn't hold back anymore and smashed the teacup on the ground. He's just a dog of Jia Sherdao. How dare he show off in front of me? Bao Budong hurriedly stopped him and said, No. Please be careful with your words. We can't offend Jia Sherdao yet. Song Qingshu, who was hanging upside down outside the window, smiled and thought, so with these two clowns, why didn't I see them in the king of Shu's mansion last time? Murong Fu snorted and said, Of course I know. Otherwise, I wouldn't have let him leave like this. Feng Poliu said impatiently, I don't know what's wrong with Jia Sherdao. Our young master's northern expedition is so promising, and it's a great opportunity for him to make a name for himself. How could he stop us? No. Bao Budong continued to shake his head and said, There are two mistakes. First, our young master has already made a name for himself by suppressing the traitor Wu Shi, so he doesn't need to make any more achievements. Second, Jia Sherdao has always been a firm supporter of peace, while Han Xingzhou is a supporter of war. Now, Han Xingzhou's position is shaky because of the series of northern expeditions. If the northern expedition in Sichuan succeeds, the Jin Kingdom will have to transfer troops from the east to the west. In that case, Han Xingzhou will have a chance to catch his breath, and maybe he can make a comeback. How could Jia Sherdao give him such a chance? So it would be strange if they didn't obstruct us. Hearing Bao Budong's arguments, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. Bao Budong's analysis made sense. Song Qingshu had been too concerned, and he hadn't thought about the whole situation from Jia Sherdao's point of view. It was true that Song Qingshu couldn't just sit back and watch Sichuan go north to save Han Xingzhou's life. Feng Fenger was shocked. Isn't Jia Sherdao sacrificing the interests of the country and the people to satisfy his own selfish desires? This time, Bao Budong changed his usual frivolous tone into a serious one. For politicians like them, which one of them isn't the same? In this aspect, young master should learn more from him. Murong Fu nodded and asked in a deep voice, What should we do next? Are we really going to follow Jia Sherdao's orders and do nothing? No. Bao Budong shook his head. We have to listen to Jia Sherdao's orders, but that doesn't mean we'll do nothing. In fact, it's not necessarily a bad thing that Jia Sherdao stopped young master from going north. You've already made a great contribution by suppressing Wu Shi, so no matter how glorious the northern expedition is, you'll face a situation where you won't be rewarded. However, if there's a setback in the war, young master will face severe punishment. So, it's better to follow Jia Shidao's instructions and stay in seclusion. Of course, you won't completely listen to Jia Shidao's arrangements. Young master, you want to revive the Yin kingdom, and Sichuan has always been a prosperous country. The Qin kingdom conquered the world with Sichuan, and Emperor Gaozu of the Han dynasty won the Chu-Han War because of the endless logistical support from Sichuan. It's gods that you have Sichuan. It seems that the Murong family's hope of reviving the Yin kingdom will come true. Hearing what Bao Budong said, Murong Fu was overjoyed. Brother Bao, you're really farsighted. However, I'm only the highest-ranking official in Sichuan, and there are still many people who won't listen to me. I'm afraid it's too early to talk about founding a nation. Isn't there a great opportunity to clean up the officialdom in Sichuan? Bao Budong smiled. Oh, Murong Fu's expression changed, and even Song Qing-shu, who was outside, became interested. Didn't Jia Shidao ask young master to restrain his subordinates from sending troops? But those arrogant soldiers and generals may not be obedient. Young master, you can make appropriate arrangements to defeat them, and then use military law to punish a group of generals who aren't loyal to young master, Bao Butong said in a low voice. Feng Polio, who was standing aside, frowned. That's not what a gentleman would do. No, you're being too soft-hearted. Bao Budong didn't agree. Young master, you're ambitious, and you're on par with the emperors of the past dynasties. Of course, you can't be judged by ordinary moral standards. Feng Polio opened his mouth and wanted to refute, but he couldn't argue with Bao Butong. In the end, he remembered that he was a retainer of the Murong family, so he sighed and didn't say anything. Outside the window, Song Qing-shu thought to himself, this Bao is different. Usually, he only knows how to bicker. I didn't expect him to occasionally come up with one or two good ideas. If Murong Fu does as he says, he can indeed quickly build a team loyal to him. After listening for a while, Song Qing-shu didn't hear anything valuable, so he left quietly. He had planned to imitate what happened to Ling Hu Chong and control Murong Fu to give orders to get rid of the hidden danger in the western defense line of the Jin Kingdom. But now that he knew that Jia Shidao had intervened, the northern expedition of the armies in Sichuan would definitely fail, so he didn't need to control Murong Fu anymore. He planned to watch the show first. As expected, the situation in Sichuan changed in less than 2 days. Shun Xiaolong asked to take advantage of the victory to attack Qinlong to contain the Jin army, but Murong Fu didn't agree, so the morale of the army was greatly affected. On the same day, because the support from the rear hadn't arrived, the Jin army took back Daisen Pass. General Sun Zhongrui was furious. When he came back, he didn't even have time to take off his blood-stained robe. He went straight into Murong Fu's house and scolded him, then left angrily. Soon, Murong Fu called Yang Jiyuan to discuss with him. He pointed out that Sun Zhongrui was under Han Xingzhou's command and wanted to make a contribution in the northern expedition to relieve Han Xingzhou's pressure on the eastern defense line. Although he was temporarily suppressed, no one knew what he would do next. What if he ruined the prime minister's plan? Yang Jiyuan had switched allegiance to Jia Shidao from Han Xingzhou not long ago, so he had been a little uneasy about it. He wanted to make a contribution so that he could stand firm in front of his new master. So he agreed to Murong Fu's arrangement. He sent soldiers to disguise themselves as Jin soldiers and kill Sun Zhongrui on his way to the new place. This caused a stir in the officialdom of Sichuan. After all, the place where Sun Zhongrui was killed was under the control of the Southern Song dynasty. How could there be Jin soldiers there? Because he had just had a fierce argument with Murong Fu. Many people suspected that he was the culprit. Unlike other people's speculations, Shun Xiaolong, the Three Emotions Taoist priest, went directly to Murong Fu's mansion to question him. He had military power, and he was powerful in martial arts, so he didn't worry that Murong Fu would do anything to him. Faced with his repeated questions, Murong Fu looked like he wanted to say something, but he stopped on second thought, as if there was something he couldn't say. In the end, Shun Xiaolong asked his servants to leave and went to his secret room to talk. Murong Fu hesitantly took out a document, which recorded the names of the soldiers that Yang Jiyuan had mobilized a few days ago, as well as the details of all the operations. He said that it was the result of his investigation. Shun Xiaolong was extremely shocked when he learned that the murderer was Yang Jiyuan. At the same time, he expressed confusion and doubt. Then, Murong Fu told him that Yang Jiyuan was Jia Shidao's subordinate and told him that he also wanted to conquer the Central Plains in the north, but he couldn't go against Jia Shidao's order. And Yang Jiyuan was Jia Shidao's chess piece to keep an eye on him, before saying that Murong Fu had investigated Shun Xiaolong in detail. He knew that Shun Xiaolong had always been neutral. He didn't work for Han Xingzhou, nor did he work for Jia Shidao. It could be said that Shun Xiaolong was one of the few people in the officialdom who wholeheartedly served the country. As expected, Shun Xiaolong was filled with righteous indignation after learning the whole story. In his opinion, a power struggle was one thing, but if the fate of the country and the lives of the people were to be gambled for a power struggle, it was completely intolerable. Murong Fu took a look at his expression and continued to say that if he wasn't worried about the unrest in Sichuan, he would definitely kill Yang Jiyuan himself. After hearing that, Shun Xiaolong left thoughtfully. After Song Qingshu eavesdropped on the conversation between Murong Fu and Yang Jiyuan, he went back and asked Ren Yingying to go straight down the river to Jianghuai to inform Tashkis not to panic because of the attack on the western front of Sichuan. He would take care of all the problems here. It was thousands of miles to go to Jianghuai. If there was a choice, Song Qingshu didn't want Ren Yingying to travel all the way. But this time, it was the handover with Tashkis, which was too important. He couldn't leak anything, so he could only send his closest people. Fortunately, the journey went straight down the river, which saved a lot of traveling. After Song Qingshu asked her to inform Tashkis, he went to Yangzhou to inform Zhou Zhuo to send troops to the west, pretending to cooperate with the Song army to pressure the Jin Kingdom and urge them to negotiate. After all, the Golden Snake Battalion agreed to participate in the Southern Song Dynasty's northern expedition, but they had been acting as bystanders. This had already aroused the dissatisfaction of many people. In order to avoid losing the support of the people, it was necessary to maintain the necessary posture. After Ren Yingying left, Song Qingshu had been silently observing Murong Fu's actions. One day, he suddenly found Ruan Xingzhu and asked, "Madam, shall we go and avenge you today?" Today? Ruan Xingzhu was a little surprised. Speaking of which, her mood had been fluctuating greatly recently. Originally, she was very happy when she saw the Sichuan army winning in the northern expedition. But what came next was a wave of defeats. Recently, the various armies even quieted down and no one mentioned the northern expedition anymore. Just when she was feeling a little down, she couldn't react for a moment when she heard Song Qingshu's words. Chapter 1709. Ruan Xingzhu was confused. What? The reason why she delayed her revenge was because she hadn't found the decisive evidence to take down Yang Jiyuan yet. Another reason was that he was so popular that he had become one of the top leaders in Sichuan. He was at the peak of his life, so why didn't he have the chance to take revenge? Song Qingshu told her about the things he had been secretly watching Murong Fu. Of course, he didn't tell her everything, but he let her know that Murong Fu had decided to kill Yang Jiyuan. They deserved to fight each other, Ruan Xingzhu said with hatred. She didn't like Yang Jiyuan, who had killed her husband, or Murong Fu, who was Jia Shidao's henchman. But it's too easy for Yang Jiyuan to die like this. Ruan Xingzhu suddenly said with her teeth clenched. Her husband had treated her brother so well, but he not only killed him, but also plotted against her. Today, Murong Fu invited Yang Jiyuan to a banquet in the suburbs. I think he's going to kill him today. Song Qingshu said. Yang Jiyuan could be considered to be very popular now, and the security around him was usually very tight. If Murong Fu wanted to invite him to a banquet, of all places, he just had to choose the outskirts. If this wasn't a deliberate move to divert Yang Jiyuan's guards, then what was it? After his analysis, Wan Xingzhu agreed with him. It seems that Murong Fu can't hold back anymore. He can't let Yang Jiyuan die so easily. But Murong Fu is very powerful now, so we should avoid a direct conflict with him. Don't worry. Song Qingshu smiled. He won't be stupid enough to kill him at the banquet. If he does, people will think he's the murderer. I think he'll do it on Yang Jiyuan's way to the banquet or on his way back to the city. Next, the two of them laid an ambush on the path that Yang Jiyuan would definitely take to attend the banquet. Song Qingshu's lightness skill was superb. Even though he was carrying Ruan Xingzhu, he did not alarm the guards that accompanied him. The two of them followed him all the way to the banquet venue in the suburbs. Nothing happened along the way. The two of them looked at each other and understood that the trap would most likely be set on the way back, so they continued to hide. After a few hours, Yang Jin, who had eaten and drank to his heart's content, bid farewell to everyone and drunkenly boarded the palanquin to return to the city. It seems that I made the right decision to rely on Jia Sherdao. Although it wasn't bad before, I didn't have the opportunity to interact with the highest level officials in the Sichuan officialdom every day. At this time, Yang Jiyuan could be said to be riding on the crest of success, thinking that he could bring the Yang family to unprecedented heights. My only regret is that I don't know where Ruan Xingzhu is. A trace of gloom flashed across Yang Jiyuan's face. After settling things with Wu Shi that day, he had anxiously rushed back to the Yang mansion. He had planned to enjoy his sister-in-law, whom he had longed for many years. But when he returned, he found that she had disappeared without a trace. This shock was no small matter. If she were to reveal this matter, then everything would be over. Unfortunately, the countless people he had sent out had not been able to find any trace of the other party. In addition, the other party had not jumped out to accuse him during this period of time, so he was finally relieved. I guess she is afraid of my current power. After tasting the taste of power, Yang Jiyuan could not stop wanting to. Now, he was not afraid of what the other party would say, because he had enough confidence to control the public opinion and label the other party as a slut. I hope you can understand the situation. Now, that Han Xingzhou's fall is a foregone conclusion. The Ruan family that you rely on will be destroyed at any time. If you serve me well, I can still protect the Ruan family. Because of the drunkenness, Yang Jiyuan only felt a surge of heat in his lower abdomen when he thought of something exciting. As he was thinking about something wonderful, suddenly, a burst of screams came from outside and woke him up from his fantasy. When he was about to ask what had happened, the sedan chair rolled to the ground. He knew that they had most likely encountered an assassin, so he instantly woke up from his drunkenness. He pulled out his waist knife and broke out of the sedan chair. To his surprise, there was only a masked man in black outside. He had originally thought that it was Ruan Xingzhu who had come to assassinate him for revenge. "Who the hell are you?" Yang Jun gripped the saber on his waist tightly as he glanced at the corpses strewn all over the place. His pupils constricted instantly. The other party was able to finish off his bodyguards in such a short period of time. It was obvious that he was an expert among experts. The man in black did not answer and directly raised his sword to stab Yang Jiyuan. Yang Jiyuan hurriedly focused 120% to deal with him. He also had good martial arts skills, so he was not too afraid of the other party. He thought that as long as he could hold on for a long time, he would be saved when other officials passed by. However, the other party's sword art was like maggots in tarsal bones, extremely ruthless. Not long after, several bloody wounds appeared on his body. Moreover, he had drunk wine, so his martial arts skills were greatly reduced compared to the past. With a moment of carelessness, his wrist was stabbed and blood gushed out. How could he still hold his waist knife? The three emotions sword art, you were fucking Shun Xiaolong. Although he had lost the ability to fight, Yang Jiyuan's mind suddenly became clear. He thought of something and cursed angrily. Seeing that his identity had been seen through, The man in black no longer concealed himself and took off his mask. Sure enough, it was the three emotions Taoist Shun Xiaolong. Surnamed Yang, today is the day you die. How did I offend you? Yang Jun was shocked and angry, and he cursed while dodging. If you don't want people to know, then don't do it. When you go to the underworld, apologize to Sun Zhongrui. Shun Xiaolong snorted coldly and raised his sword to stab. Yang Jiyuan hurriedly shouted, "Wait, killing Sun Zhongrui was Murong Fu's idea. It has nothing to do with me." Shun Xiaolong sneered. "Even now, you still dare to frame others. I have investigated carefully. The soldiers who attacked Sun Zhongrui were all under your command. Although Murong Fu is nominally your superior, you have the Yang family backing you. Who doesn't fear you? How could he order you around? It's useless to say more. Die." They had already wasted a lot of time here, and Shun Xiaolong was worried that other officials would pass by with their attendants. Worried that a long delay would bring trouble, he directly stabbed his sword toward Yang Jiyuan's throat. Just as he was about to get justice for Sun Zhongrui, a small stone suddenly flew over and hit the tip of his sword. Shun Xiaolong felt his hand go numb, and he almost lost his grip on his sword. He couldn't help but look to the side in horror. Unknowingly, a man and a woman had appeared beside him. The man was tall and straight, and the woman was graceful. It could be seen that they were young, but both of them were wearing veils, so their appearances couldn't be seen clearly. "Who are you?" Shun Xiaolong was terrified. This man and woman were naturally Song Qingshu and Ruan Xingzhu. Pointing at Yang Jian, who was scared out of his wits, Song Qingshu said in a deep voice, "I want this person. You are the person who saved Wu Shi that night." At this time, Shun Xiaolong finally felt a familiar aura from him. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. "Since you have recognized me, then you should know that you are no match for me." Shun Xiaolong's expression changed, and it was obvious that he was in an intense mental struggle. However, in the end, he cupped his hands and chose to leave. Although he wanted to avenge Sun Zhongrui, he wasn't stupid enough to make unnecessary sacrifices when he knew that he was no match for him. Wait a moment. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him, causing him to be startled. "What advice do you have for me?" Shun Xiaolong had goosebumps all over his body. Noticing that Shun Xiaolong's hand was slightly pale, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. "Don't be nervous. I just want to remind you to be careful of Murong Fu." Shun Xiaolong was startled. "What do you mean?" Song Qingshu shook his head. "Even if I tell you more now, you might not believe me. I can only say as much as I can. You just need to remember this. Shun Xiaolong was a loyal and righteous person." Song Qingshu didn't want him to die in Murong Fu's hands for no reason. Shun Xiaolong frowned and suddenly thought of what Yang Jiyuan had just said. A shadow inexplicably shrouded his heart, and in the end, he left with a heart full of doubts. Seeing that he had left, Yang Jiyuan heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly got up and bowed to Song Qingshu. "Thank you, benefactor, for saving me. May I ask for benefactor's name? I will definitely repay you generously." "Benefactor?" Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh, and he couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He directly hit Yang Jiyuan's sleeping acupoint and carried him away. When Yang Jiyuan woke up, he was shocked to find himself in the wilderness. Looking up, he saw a stone tablet with the words Yang Gongyi Zhenzhong's tomb written on it, and he couldn't help but be frightened. This. A few days ago, he had personally buried his big brother, so how could he not know where he was? Song Qingshu stood not far away and said to Ruan Xingzhu, "I'll leave this person to madam." Ruan Xingzhu's eyes were a little red, and she pursed her lips. "Thank you, young master." At this moment, the two of them took off their masks, and Yang Jiyuan finally saw her face clearly. He couldn't help but be shocked and angry. "Bitch, it's you." Ruan Xingzhu sneered. "Last time, I told you that you would suffer retribution for doing such a thing that goes against human morality, but you didn't believe me. You didn't expect that would come true so quickly, did you?" Yang Jiyuan's expression changed several times, but he quickly squeezed out a smile. "Sister-in-law, I was just joking with you last time. Please don't take it seriously. Joking? Ruan Xingzhu sneered. Yes, I was joking. Yang Jiyun hurriedly explained. Big brother has treated me with great kindness, so why would I harm him? If you don't believe me, you can open his coffin and do an autopsy right now to see if he committed suicide or was murdered. Trying to stall for time? Ruan Xingzhu snorted. Then why did you have bad intentions towards me before? Sister-in-law, I was possessed for a moment. Ever since the day you married into the Yang clan, I was shocked by you. However, you're my sister-in-law, so I could only suppress this feeling in my heart. Then, Big Brother unfortunately passed away, and I thought I could finally pursue you, so I was confused for a moment. That day I also drank a little, so I said some nonsense. This was a matter of life and death. So, Yang Jiyuan's brain was many times faster than usual. What a glib tongue. You can explain to Zhenzhong when you're in the underworld. Ruan Xingzhu stepped forward and grabbed him by the collar, dragging him to her husband's tombstone like a dead dog. Yang Jiyuan finally understood that he couldn't escape today, so he started cursing. Who was that man just now? He's your lover, right? You slut, you vixen. Big brother has just died, and you've already found yourself a wild man. At first, he was still cursing, but later on, his screams were mixed with pleading. Don't kill me. If you kill me, the Yang clan will have no more descendants. Even if Big Brother's spirit is in heaven, he won't allow you to do this. Bitch, if the Yang clan's bloodline ends, the Yang clan's ancestors will curse you. Chapter 17:10. About 2 hours later, Yang Jiyuan's screams were full of vigor at first, but they gradually became softer and softer, and finally became completely silent. After a while, Ruan Xingzhu slowly walked out. Her eyes were red, and it was obvious that she had just cried. It was unknown whether it was because she was happy that she had gotten her revenge, or because she was sad that she was mourning her husband. Looking at the bloodstains on her dress, Song Qingshu asked with concern, "Is Madam okay?" Ruan Xingzhu shook her head and forced a smile. "She's fine. It's that man's blood." Song Qingshu shuddered and thought to himself, "Don't mess with women. Women are too ruthless when they take revenge." Yang Jiyuan must have suffered a torture no less than death by 1,000 cuts. Ruan Xingzhu took out the oil barrels she had prepared and poured them around the hut. Then, she took out a match and set the hut on fire. By the time someone notices the fire here, Yang Jiyuan will have been burned to ashes. No one will know that it was him who died. Song Qingshu said in a low voice, "It's better to let people know his identity. If they see him die in front of his brother's grave, it might cause people to think that there's something wrong with your husband's death." Ruan Xingzhu shook her head. "No, it's easy to make people suspect me. It's a special time now. If the Yang family has internal strife, it will take a long time to find out the truth. I don't have that much time. I need to take over the Yang family as soon as possible, so I can't announce Yang Jiyuan's crimes. I can only continue to maintain his reputation as a loyal minister." "You're really loyal to Han Xingzhou. You still don't forget to do things for him at this time." Song Qingshu naturally knew why she took over the Yang family. It was mostly to support Han Xingzhou. Besides, hearing the unwillingness in her tone, he couldn't help but sigh. No wonder Yang Jiyuan was tortured like that. Obviously, she didn't want him to lose his reputation, so she could only vent her anger in this way. "Minister Han has done a great favor for our family. We can only repay it with our lives." Ruan Xingzhu sighed as if this was her predestined fate. "Let's go. The fire is soaring. Someone will probably come to check soon." After saying this, Song Qingshu took her away. After returning to the Mirror Lake, Ruan Xingzhu said to him, "I'm covered in blood. I need to go back to my room to take a bath and change my clothes." Song Qingshu nodded and let her leave. At this time, even if he heard about bathing, he did not have any romantic thoughts in his heart. After all, she had just come back from mourning for her husband and was extremely sad. He was not a beast, so how could he have other thoughts? I wonder where Ying Ying is now. Looking at the bright moon outside the window, Song Qingshu thought it was no wonder that people in ancient times wrote poems. There was no phone, no video chat, and the isolation between people was something that people in his previous life could never experience. It was easy to be sentimental in the dead of night. However, he quickly composed himself and began to think about his next itinerary. Originally, he had planned to enter Sichuan with Ren Yingying to find out what had happened to Ling Huchong. Now that Ling Huchong's matter had been resolved, Sichuan was in a mess. He keenly sensed that this place was full of great opportunities. Unfortunately, he was not sure how to seize these opportunities. The main reason was that he had almost no power base here. So many of his plans could not be carried out. Forget it. Now that the people in Sichuan are fighting with each other, I'll just sit on the sidelines and watch from the sidelines. I'll see if there are any good opportunities in the future. Song Qingshu thought for a long time, but in the end, he could only come up with a plan that was not really a plan. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. "Young master, are you resting?" "No." Hearing that it was Ruan Xingzhu's voice, Song Qingshu was somewhat surprised. He got up and opened the door, only to see a woman dressed in plain and light-colored clothes. Her oval face was as white as snow under the hazy moonlight. Her eyes under her beautiful eyebrows seemed to have a layer of misty light in them. She had a smooth and elegant nose bridge, rosy and alluring lips, and a slender and fair neck. From time to time, her lovely and moving temperament would reveal boundless charm. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat, but he controlled his emotions very well. After all, the other party was wearing white mourning clothes. He really should not have any other thoughts. Madame bathed quite quickly. Song Qingshu was speaking the truth. In his impression, a woman's bath would take at least 2 to 4 hours. Ruan Xingzhu smiled faintly. "Young master, you didn't invite me in. Instead, you started talking about bathing with a woman. Don't you think it's a little frivolous?" Song Qingshu was startled. He smiled bitterly and said, "It's my fault. There aren't so many rules in my hometown. I'm used to speaking without thinking." As he spoke, he moved to the side and invited her in. When she walked past him, she carried a wisp of fragrance with her. However, this fragrance was not the smell of rouge and face powder. Instead, it was the natural and fresh smell of a bath. "Young master, please close the door." Ruan Xingzhu placed the wooden plate in her hand on the table and took out a few exquisite dishes. Song Qingshu felt strange. Was she hinting at something? As if she saw through his thoughts, Ruan Xingzhu faintly sighed. "Although the two of us are beautiful like the moon and the moon, we can't stand up to gossip. It's not good for others to see me in young master's room. Beautiful like the moon and the moon and the moon." Song Qingshu thought to himself as he closed the door. In his mind, he thought of the time when the two of them were on the river before they arrived in Chengdu. He wondered if Madame had some misunderstanding about this word. However, seeing that she didn't mention it, he thought of the pain she had gone through these past few days. It wasn't convenient for him to say anything. "Young master, in order to avenge me, you hid in the outskirts for an entire day. You didn't eat much, so I asked her to prepare some food and wine." Ruan Xingzhu placed the plates on the table as she spoke in a soft voice. Her voice was originally as delicate as a young girl's. At this moment, her soft voice was incomparably comfortable. Ruan Xingzhu poured 2 cups of wine and slowly brought them in front of Song Qingshu. "It's all thanks to young master that I was able to avenge me this time." Song Qingshu noticed that the white wrist exposed in her sleeve seemed to be whiter than the mourning clothes on her body. He secretly sighed in admiration. Women born in Jiangnan's water villages were indeed like water. "You are currently in mourning. Would it be inappropriate for you to drink?" Song Qingshu was somewhat hesitant. Ruan Xingzhu smiled bitterly. "If Zhenzhong knows in the underworld, he would definitely want me to toast you with a cup of wine. Since that's the case, I won't be unreasonable." Song Qingshu lightly clinked his cup with hers and drank the wine in one gulp. He felt a little strange. He thought to himself, "If your husband knew in the underworld, he probably wouldn't thank me." Following that, Ruan Xingzhu poured another cup of wine and toasted him. "Right now, Minister Han is in a precarious situation. Our Ruan family is also in a precarious situation. After today, We don't know what tomorrow will be like. Hearing the weakness and exhaustion in her voice, Song Qingshu replied, Madam, have you forgotten our agreement? In the future, you can rely on the Golden Snake Camp. I can provide protection for your Ruan family. Ruan Xingzhu shook her head slightly. Of course I haven't forgotten, but who wants to change sides? If possible, I still hope that Minister Han can tide over this crisis. The two of them drank and chatted. After a while, an intoxicating blush gradually appeared on Ruan Xingzhu's delicate and fair face. Her beautiful starry eyes glowed with an indescribable light. I have something to ask young master to help me with. Just say it, madam. As long as I can do it, I will do my best. Song Qingshu was also a little tipsy. The relationship between the two of them was a little strange. They seemed like enemies and friends at the same time, lovers and strangers at the same time. Ruan Xingzhu didn't immediately say what she wanted. She just stared at him inexplicably. Young master will definitely be able to do this, and it will only be a slight effort. Then there is no reason to refuse. Song Qingshu also became interested and looked at her curiously. Just now in front of Xinzhong's grave, did young master hear what Yang Jiyuan said to me? Ruan Xingzhu still didn't answer. Instead, she brought up the previous matter. Song Qingshu didn't understand what she meant. He subconsciously replied, It's just the crazy bites of a mad dog before it dies. Madam, you don't have to take it to heart. Ruan Xingzhu slowly shook her head and said in an inexplicable tone, I didn't care about the other things he said. But there was one thing he said that hit my soft spot. What is it? Song Qingshu looked at her in puzzlement. He said that he is the only one left in the Yang family now. If he is killed, the Yang family's lineage will end. Even if Big Brother knows about this in the underworld, he won't agree to kill him. Ruan Xingzhu's face turned pale when she said this. She directly drank a cup of wine before continuing. He also said that I will be cursed by the ancestors of the Yang family because I ended the Yang family's lineage. After saying this, she felt a chill and couldn't help but hug her arms. Song Qingshu took off his coat and put it on her. He couldn't help but frown. Madam, why do you care about these crazy words? If the ancestors of the Yang family are really watching from the heavens, why would they watch him kill his brother and tyrannize his sister-in-law? Ruan Xingzhu shook her head. Young master, you don't understand the thinking of big families like us. We don't discuss right or wrong when we do anything. Instead, we consider the interests of the family. As the saying goes, there are 3 ways to be unfilial, and the worst is to have no descendants. No matter how many mistakes Yang Jiyuan has made, it's not as serious as ending the Yang family's lineage. Song Qingshu nodded. In this world, the concept of clans and their obsession with incense was indeed something that later generations would not be able to understand. It should be known that in his era, having a daughter was gradually more popular among young people than having a son. Be it in terms of spending in the future or how considerate they would be when they grew up, sons were far inferior to daughters. Actually, this isn't impossible. The Yang family is such a big family. There are bound to be a few distant relatives. Can't we just find someone of suitable age to adopt? Song Qingshu thought of an idea. Ruan Xingzhu said, How can it be so easy? The Yang family has always been small. Who knows how many generations of distant relatives we have? They're no longer of the same bloodline as us. Moreover, I don't want the family business that I have worked so hard to build to benefit an outsider who has no blood relations with me. Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, There's no other way. Ruan Xingzhu suddenly said, Actually, there's another way. I just need young master's help. What? Song Qingshu was stunned. Chapter 17:11. What do you mean by telling me? In fact, Song Qingshu had already guessed her thoughts. He couldn't help but think of Lu Guanying and Cheng Yaojia back then. He clearly didn't have a child yet, but there were so many people who came to borrow it. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Ruan Xingzhu looked at him with some hidden bitterness. Does young master want me to say it so clearly to humiliate me? A trace of awkwardness flashed across Song Qingshu's face. It was indeed not kind of him to play dumb at this time. He said, Madam, even if you're the fastest to get pregnant, the timing doesn't match. You and your husband haven't seen each other for so long. If you get pregnant at this time, everyone will be suspicious and it will affect Madam's reputation. Actually, we met once more than a month ago, although we didn't. Wan Xingzhu blushed slightly. But outsiders won't know about this. It's still up to me. Song Qing-shu still frowned. But this kind of thing will inevitably attract criticism and suspicion. There's no such thing as the best of both worlds. Wan Xingzhu sighed. It can't be helped if others suspect me. But as long as I'm strong enough, they can only limit their suspicion. Is it necessary to take such a big risk just because of Yang Jiyuan's crazy words? Song Qing-shu tried to dissuade her. Wan Xingzhu answered, Actually, there's another reason. Although I'm the official wife of the clan head, my husband is dead. As a woman, I will encounter many problems if I want to control the Yang clan. As the saying goes, if I don't have a proper title, my words won't be justified. If I have the clan head's posthumous child, who would dare to say anything? Of course, it will also allow the Yang clan to continue its lineage. It will also be considered as my compensation to him. The concept of clans in this world was very different from the future world. As long as one adopted a son, the biological parents wouldn't be officially recognized. Regardless of whether it was the public opinion or the government, they all recognized that you were the child of the parent and not the biological father. Therefore, Song Qing-shu didn't quite understand Wan Xingzhu's behavior. He felt that it was ridiculous. But in this world values, such behavior was logical. Many people on the internet discussed how Pan Jinlian could successfully hook up with Wu Song. After eliminating countless methods, the most feasible one was that she pretended to be aggrieved and sacrificed in the name of passing on the Wu clan's lineage. That way, there was still a slight possibility of sleeping with Wu Song. Why are you suddenly thinking of Pan Jinlian? I'm not Shimin Qing. Qing-shu immediately. I've said it this way, young master still isn't willing to help. Seeing him remain silent, Wan Xingzhu's heart was filled with sorrow. She revealed a tearful expression. Since that's the case, I'll think of another way. Farewell, Wu. Qing-shu said. Yang. Yang said. Wan Xingzhu borrowed the force of his pull and sat on his lap. She said faintly, Since young master is unwilling, I can only ask for help from others. Song Qing-shu's face darkened, and he flatly refused. No. Is young master jealous? Wan Xingzhu revealed a victorious smile. With a straight face, Song Qing-shu snappily said, This is just a man's possessiveness. You can say whatever you want. I'm still happy to see your reaction. Qingzhu bit her lips. Her eyes were filled with a layer of misty tears. At this point, Song Qing-shu was not Lixiaowi. He snorted, picked her up, and walked to the bed. Of course, he was not blinded by her beauty, but after careful consideration, he had been thinking about how to subdue the Wan family and the Yang family for his own use. Simply relying on poison to control them would definitely not work. After all, it was more reliable to tie the interests of both sides together. Previously, their relationship as lovers was not stable. If the two had a child, there would be a bond of connection. At that time, no matter from what aspect, Wan Xingzhu would be more inclined to his side. Do you want me to change my clothes? It's a little inauspicious. Wan Xingzhu's delicate, snow-white skin was stained with a layer of pink, and her legs were gently swaying in the man's arms. It was unknown if it was because of the candlelight or because she was shy, but Wan Xingzhu's delicate, snow-white skin was stained with a layer of pink, and her legs were gently swaying in the man's arms. Song Qing-shu looked down and saw that she was wearing a white morning dress, which made her skin look like the best white jade, crystal clear and attractive. He couldn't help but feel a little dry in his throat. No need, this is just right. Qing-shu's eyes moved. She quickly understood his thoughts. She spat softly. Men are really bad. When Song Qing-shu woke up the next morning, he found that Wan Xingzhu was no longer by his side. He knew that they were on the Mirror Lake, so he had to keep up appearances. If he woke up at the same time as Wan Xingzhu, the servants would inevitably criticize him. Sunlight spilled into the room. Smelling the fresh breeze from the river, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but think of some scenes from last night. Rosy lips, perky breasts, slender and elastic waist, full and sexy buttocks. There was not a single part that wasn't seductive. It was no wonder that so many men liked young married women. Women like them were really memorable. Their bodies were soft and plump, full of lust, mature, and full of interest. Their charming eyes did not conceal their passionate feelings. As he thought about it, Song Qing-shu felt his body heat up again. He hurriedly adjusted his mind. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. It turned out that a servant had come to report that Lady Ruan had invited him over for a chat. Song Qing-shu was startled. They had just parted for a short while, and they were meeting again. He subconsciously thought of something else, but he quickly shook his head. He knew that Qing-zhu was a mature and wise woman. She was not the kind of person who was greedy for pleasure. At this time, something must have happened. It was not convenient for her to come to him personally, so she could only send someone to inform him. Song Qing-shu quickly put on his clothes and walked quickly to the deck. Ruan Xingzhu had set up a small table on the top deck. She had prepared a dozen exquisite side dishes on it. "Young master, please enjoy your meal. These are specially prepared Chengdu pastries." Qingzhu dismissed the servant and smiled. Her cheeks were as red as peach blossoms. Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Is it because you sympathize with my hard work last night and specially prepared this to nourish my body?" Qingzhu's heart beat wildly. He had made her recall the events of last night. For a moment, her body felt weak. She snorted and said, "What nonsense are you talking about so early in the morning?" Thinking about how she looked in the mirror this morning, her complexion was much rosier than usual. She sighed inwardly, thinking that women still needed a man to nourish them. She had been a little too stubborn these past few years. Song Qing-shu scooped up a spoon and said, "Not bad. It has the same feeling as when I ate the dragon soup. Madam called me over so early in the morning. It can't be that you just want to treat me to breakfast, right?" Qingzhu was wondering what the dragon soup was. Hearing this, she subconsciously replied, "There is indeed something. I just received news from Jianghuai this morning. The minister sent to the Jin, Fang Xinru, has brought back Wanyan Zhonghao's reply. He said that if we become subjects, we will draw the boundary between Jianghuai and Jianghuai. If we become subjects, we will use the Yangtze River as the boundary, behead the traitor, and offer him a letter. We will increase the number of coins and reward him. Only then can we negotiate peace." Song Qing-shu frowned. He naturally knew that the so-called traitor and traitor referred to Han Xingzhou. The other conditions were not unexpected, but what puzzled him the most was why the Jin wanted to kill Han Xingzhou. Not to mention the fact that he had a good relationship with Han Xingzhou. Even if it was to restrain Jia Sherdao and prevent him from monopolizing power, Han Xingzhou couldn't be killed. What was Tashkis doing? Suddenly, he was shocked. He remembered that Xiao Zhao's father, Mr. Silverleaf, Han Xinya, had accepted a secret mission from Han Xingzhou. He went north to the Central Plains and died in a foreign land. Could it be that Tashkis had always held a grudge against him and was taking this opportunity to avenge her husband? However, Song Qing-shu felt that Tashkis wouldn't do something like this. He quickly thought of another possibility. Could it be that Fang Xinru was working for Jia Sherdao and had purposely added fuel to the fire? Unfortunately, there was too little information for him to determine the truth. He asked, "How did Han Xingzhou react?" Ruan Xingzhu smiled bitterly and said, "Of course, Prime Minister Han was furious and decided to mobilize the army again. The emperor issued an edict to recruit new soldiers and appointed Xian Qiji as the Privy Council's commander to replace Su Sherdan in commanding the military. It was a pity that the 68-year-old Xian Qiji was sick at home. After the appointment was issued, he died at home before he could take up his post. Sigh, it seems that even God is not on Prime Minister Han's side. Old Xian is dead?" Song Qing-shu was stunned. He had been quite excited to see this historical figure with his own eyes. Speaking of which, he had helped him when he was afflicted with the golden ripple flower in Yangzhou. He didn't expect to hear news of him like this. However, the average lifespan in this era wasn't too long. 68 years old was already considered a long life. However, he had no chance to restore the Central Plains when he was young. Now that he finally had the chance, he couldn't hold on anymore. Things in the world were really unpredictable. For Ruan Xingzhu, she was more concerned about Han Xingzhou's situation. She continued, now that Prime Minister Han is in danger, he may be attacked by his political enemies at any time. So, I must do something in Sichuan to support him. Young master, let's join forces and control Sichuan as soon as possible. Song Qingshu said in a deep voice, controlling Sichuan is easier said than done. Ruan Xingzhu sighed faintly. Young master, why do you have to lie to me? Everywhere you go, you have great power. In just 2 or 3 years, you have built such a huge foundation from commoner. How can you not have a solution to the current situation? As the saying goes, a clever housewife can't cook a meal without rice. Song Qingshu spread out his hands. What's the use of just having a solution? Ruan Xingzhu pursed her lips and said, these years, the Ruan family has a certain influence in Sichuan. With the addition of the local snake, the Yang family, is enough to provide support to young master. As long as you can control Sichuan as soon as possible, then the Ruan family and the Yang family will be at your command. In the future, half of Sichuan will be young masters. Song Qingshu smiled faintly. He knew that it was already a great concession for her to offer him half of the benefits. After all, in theory, Sichuan belonged to the Southern Song dynasty and was Han Xingzhou's private land. However, he wasn't satisfied with half. He wanted all of it. Of course, there was no need to talk about this now. It was better to work together to take down Sichuan first. After all, he knew that Han Xingzhou's fall was a foregone conclusion. When the time came, Ruan Xingzhu would be driven into a corner and would naturally lean towards him. Chapter 17:12. Ruan Xingzhu was overjoyed. She blinked her eyes at him and said, please enlighten me, sir. Being looked at by a mature woman like a little girl with admiration made Song Qingshu feel good, even though he had a strong will. He answered slowly, although the situation in Sichuan is chaotic, it can be divided into several groups. Murong Fu was the most powerful one, and he was appointed by the imperial court to have the highest official position. In addition, Yang Jiyuan, Lu Changhua, Zhang Ning, and Zhu Bangyi are all trusted subordinates of Jia Sherdao, and they also have some military power. Shen Xiaolong and Sun Zhongrui represent the neutral party. They don't belong to Jia Sherdao, nor do they favor Han Xingzhou. Now that Sun Zhongrui was killed by Yang Jiyuan, and Yang Jiyuan was killed by Shen Xiaolong, Jia Sherdao only has Lu Changhua, Zhang Ning, and Zhu Bangyi left, and the neutral party only has Shen Xiaolong. Hearing his words, Ruan Xingzhu asked confusedly, isn't there still the most powerful person in Jia Sherdao's party, Murong Fu? Song Qingshu smiled and said, although Murong Fu was promoted by Jia Sherdao, he is very ambitious and will never be subordinate to others. That's why I said we have a great opportunity. Oh, Ruan Xingzhu was surprised. As an ace secret agent, she had been in contact with high-level political struggles. Hearing this, she naturally thought of a series of things. Song Qingshu continued, Murong Fu isn't willing to be restrained by others. He wants to monopolize Sichuan and turn it into his private plot of land. In this way, the others must be eliminated. In addition to Shen Xiaolong, Jia Sherdao's trusted subordinates Lu Changhua, Zhang Ning, and Zhu Bangyi must be killed. Ruan Xingzhu gradually understood. It turns out that Yang Jiyuan was used by Murong Fu to kill Sun Zhongrui. Then, he used that as an excuse to encourage Shen Xiaolong to kill Yang Jiyuan. I'm afraid it's Shen Xiaolong's turn next. Not bad. Song Qingshu nodded. Although they were able to analyze the situation so clearly, it was because he had the ability to predict everything. He knew about the Murong family's determination to restore the country, and he had overheard the conversation between the Murong family and Bao Budong and other family members a few days ago. That was why he was able to analyze the situation thoroughly. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't have thought that Murong Fu who had been promoted by Jia Sherdao, would betray him at this critical moment. Actually, there's another unknown factor. We don't know where Zhuo Linchan and Shi Patian from the Song Mountain sect are, and we don't know if Jia Sherdao has sent other masters here. Song Qingshu fell into deep thought. Although Zhuo Linchan's martial arts were high, he was still not worthy of his attention. What he was worried about was Shi Patian. Judging from the last time they fought, Shi Patian's martial arts had improved by leaps and bounds, reaching an unimaginable level. He was almost on par with people like Zhang Sanfeng, the floor-sweeping monk, and Huang Chang. Of course, in terms of experience, combat experience, and cultivation level, he was definitely not as good as Shi Patian. Did he learn the Taishan Sutra on the Island of Heroes? Song Qingshu vaguely felt that Shi Patian's martial arts were somewhat familiar, and that was the only possibility. However, he wasn't worried because he had already learned the essence of the Taishan Sutra on the Island of Heroes. Shi Patian had only learned the superficial parts of the Taishan Sutra. Don't worry about that. According to reliable information, Shi Patian, Zhuo Linchan, and other masters were secretly sent back by Jia Sherdao a few days ago, Ruan Xingzhu answered. Song Qingshu was stunned. The situation in Sichuan is treacherous, and it hasn't stabilized yet. Jia Sherdao suddenly sent them away at this critical moment. Does he have something more important for them to do? He didn't doubt the accuracy of her information. With the power of the Ruan family and the Yang family, as well as the intelligence network that she must have controlled about Han Xingzhou, it wouldn't be difficult to find this information. Ruan Xingzhu shook her head. I don't know about that. Let's focus on Sichuan. Song Qingshu nodded. Next, Murong Fu will definitely kill Shun Xiaolong. If I'm not mistaken, he will still use the method of killing Shun Xiaolong with a borrowed knife. Meanwhile, in Yang Jiyuan's residence, Lu Changhua, Zhang Ning, Zhu Bangyi, and the others were aggressively questioning Yang Jiyuan about what was going on with him. Because of the fire, someone soon found Yang Jiyuan's body. Although it was burned black, some of his belongings could still be identified as his. Moreover, it could be seen that he had suffered extremely cruel torture before his death. The other generals were both furious and bitterly disappointed, so they came together to question Murong Fu. It had to be known that Yang Jiyuan had accepted his invitation to attend the banquet, but he had been killed on the way back. It was very difficult not to suspect him. Murong Fu still showed his superb acting skills and swore that it had nothing to do with him. Then, he inadvertently mentioned his findings, saying that Shun Xiaolong had been suspicious for the past 2 days and that he had gone to son Zhong Rui's grave to mourn. Because Shun Xiaolong had always been indifferent to Jia Sherdao's recruitment, the others had long disliked him. After being led by Murong Fu, they analyzed the situation and finally agreed that Shun Xiaolong had killed Yang Jiyuan to avenge son Zhong Rui. Although they usually fought for power, they were all under Jia Sherdao's command. Seeing Yang Jiyuan die so miserably, they inevitably felt sorry for him. They all shouted excitedly that they would avenge their comrade. However, Murong Fu stopped them and said, "Everyone, please don't be rash. Shun Xiaolong's martial arts are very high, and he has a group of elite soldiers under his command. If he were to discover anything and cause a ruckus, it wouldn't be good for the imperial court." They shivered, not because they were afraid of the court, but because they thought that if they accidentally forced Shun Xiaolong to rebel and ruined Jia Sherdao's plan, they would all be in big trouble. If we want to kill him, we can't do it in the military camp. We can only lure him out. The fewer guards, the better, Lu Chang said. Zhang Ning on the side also echoed. Yes, and considering that he is highly skilled in martial arts, if he accidentally escapes, it will be a great disaster. But how can we ensure that we can kill him with one blow? Although Murong Fu's martial arts were renowned throughout the world, Shun Xiaolong's performance during the attack on the Shu King's residence was not inferior. Moreover, they did not know if Shun Xiaolong had any trump cards that he had not revealed, so they did not have full confidence that they could defeat him. Why don't we use poison? Zhu Bangyi suggested. Everyone's eyes lit up. They thought that was the best way, so they quickly came up with a plan. That was Murong Fu would invite Shun Xiaolong to a banquet. After all, Murong Fu was the highest officer in Sichuan. Shun Xiaolong couldn't bring too many guards to the banquet. If they poisoned the food and wine, Shun Xiaolong would be killed, even if he had great martial arts. After Song Qing-shu and Ruan Xingzhu finished breakfast, they went back to the Yang mansion. After all, there were still many of Yang Jiyuan's henchmen in the Yang mansion, and they needed someone to suppress them. Ruan Xingzhu was a weak woman, so Song Qing-shu pretended to be her henchman and helped her get rid of those who were against her as soon as possible. Throughout the whole process, Song Qing-shu admired Ruan Xingzhu's skills and ability. She was indeed a woman who ran the biggest royal business in the world. With the help of military force, she quickly took over the Yang family, promoting some people and dismissing others. She was very skilled. In about a day, she got the Yang family to surrender to her. As for some of them who had other thoughts, she would naturally get rid of them one by one in the future. Madame is really a woman who doesn't lose to men. After they were done, the two of them went to the study to rest. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. Ruan Xingzhu changed her image of a strong woman in front of the Yang family. She stood behind him and gently massaged his shoulders. It's all thanks to young master's absolute military force that I can take over so smoothly. Song Qing-shu suddenly thought of something she said before and said gloomily, "Just now, you said in front of the Yang family that you're pregnant with Yang Zhenzhong's posthumous child. How long can you hide this? In another 2 or 3 months, when your belly doesn't get bigger, they will immediately expose your lie." Ruan Xingzhu smiled sweetly. "Don't we still have 2 or 3 months of buffer time?" As she spoke, she leaned over to Song Qing-shu's ear and blew gently. "So, young master, you have to do your best during this period." Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He smiled bitterly and said, "This thing isn't something you can get pregnant with just because you want it. Most of the time, it depends on fate." Ruan Xingzhu bit her lip. Her eyebrows were full of charm. "So, we have to make good use of our time during this period. Whenever we're free, well, young master is full of vigor. I believe it won't take long." The two of them were very close to each other. Feeling the sweet scent on her body, Song Qing-shu was aroused by her and pulled her into his arms. "We're free now. I'm still in mourning right now," Ruan Xingzhu said. Her charming eyes were full of endless charm and charm. "So what?" Song Qing-shu snorted and buried his head in her clothes. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door. Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly restrained her trembling voice. "What's the matter?" "Madam, our scouts have just reported that Shun Xiaolong has been invited to the Proclamation Envoy's Manor for a banquet," the person outside answered. This was arranged by Ruan Xingzhu and Song Qing-shu. They were to keep an eye on Murong Fu and Shun Xiaolong's movements and report immediately if there was any situation. "Got it. You can leave now." Ruan Xingzhu turned around and smiled sweetly. "Looks like I can only come back to Sir Young Master later." Song Qing-shu wasn't the kind of person who couldn't distinguish what was important and what was not. His eyes had also regained their clarity. He gently tidied up the messy clothes on her chest. "As we expected, Murong Fu is going to make a move on Shun Xiaolong. Let's hurry over. Otherwise, it'll be too late." Ruan Xingzhu stood up from his lap, but her legs suddenly went soft. She almost lost her balance and fell again. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but tease, "Madam, you're really made of water." A layer of pink appeared on Ruan Xingzhu's milk-white skin. Her eyes were also sparkling. "It's all young master's fault." Meanwhile, Shun Xiaolong was invited to the Proclamation Envoy's Manor. From time to time, the mysterious person's warning surfaced in his mind. He secretly sized up Murong Fu. The more he looked, the more he felt that the mysterious person's words made sense. Chapter 17:13. Shin Xiaolong reacted quickly and immediately used his internal force to force out the poison wine. However, his head still felt dizzy. He thought that the poison was very strong. He did not hesitate, nor did he stop to confront these people. He directly leaped out of the window and broke through it. Lu Changhua, Zhang Ning, and Zhu Bongyi were also at the banquet. They originally planned to show their fangs after Shun Xiaolong was poisoned, but they did not expect him to find out that there was a problem with the wine so quickly, and they did not expect him to react so quickly. Chase. They were not sure how much poison wine he had drunk, but they knew that he had an elite army under his command. If they let him escape, it would inevitably be a big disaster, so they took out the weapons hidden under the table and chased after him. Even Murong Fu was no exception. As for the soldiers that Shun Xiaolong brought to the banquet, they had long been led to a secluded place by the other soldiers and killed. Shun Xiaolong did not continue to fight and desperately used his qinggong to run in the direction of his barracks. As long as he could run back to the barracks, no matter how powerful the other people were, they could not do anything to him. However, he felt that his vision was getting blurrier. He clearly knew that this was because the poison had penetrated deeper into his body. If the poison attacked his heart, even the gods could not save him. However, he could not slow down. He knew that once he stopped and was surrounded by those people, he would definitely die. If he ran desperately, there was still a chance to escape. I have heard of drinking poison to quench thirst before, but I did not expect to experience it personally today. Shun Xiaolong smiled bitterly. At the same time, he remembered the words of the mysterious man and secretly regretted that he had believed it earlier. He did not know how long he ran, but he felt that his speed was getting slower and slower. The distance that he could usually cross in one step now needed more than 10 steps. It's over. I am afraid that I will be caught soon. As soon as he thought of this, there was the sound of clothes fluttering in the air. Murong Fu had already jumped in front of him and kicked him. Shun Xiaolong hurriedly crossed his arms in front of his chest. His whole body felt like it was struck by lightning. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. General Liu, your poison is really powerful. Surnamed Shun's martial arts are not below mine. I didn't expect him to become so useless after being poisoned by a little poison. At this time, Lu Changhua and the others had already caught up. Murong Fu walked towards them. This is the world's #1 rare poison, the gold wave flower, that Lord Prime Minister bestowed upon me. It's to deal with some unexpected situations. Seeing Shun Xiaolong lying on the ground on the verge of death, Lu Changhua couldn't help but smile. Golden ripple flower? Murong Fu was horrified. He had heard that Song Qing-shu, who had such a high level of martial arts, was almost killed by this poison. Now, Shun Xiaolong was also in the same situation. What would happen if he were to encounter this poison? I've long heard of such a strange poison, but I've never seen it before. I wonder if General Liu would be willing to let me experience it. Murong Fu's heart was filled with dread. He decided to take a look first so that he could be prepared in the future. Lu Changhua looked troubled. This poison is extremely precious. Prime Minister Jia only gave me a little bit, and I've used all of it on Shun Xiaolong. Shun Xiaolong, who was not far away, faintly heard their conversation. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It turned out to be the gold wave flower. No wonder I was still poisoned, even though I spat out all of the poison wine. Speaking of which, they used the legendary world's #1 rare poison to deal with me. That's too bad. Murong Fu's heart trembled. He didn't know if Lu Changhua had really used up all of it. Moreover, when he thought about how Jia Sherdao had given such a rare poison to Lu Changhua instead of him, it was obvious that Jia Sherdao had left Murong Fu alone. Following this train of thought, who had the poison been used on in the first place? The more Murong Fu thought about it, the more frightened he became. At this time, Zhang Ning, who was next to him, said, "Why don't we take care of Shun Xiaolong first? If someone passes by and leaks the news, it won't be easy to clean up." That's right. The others all nodded. Shun Xiaolong was an important figure in the Sichuan army. If it was known that he had been poisoned to death by a few other officials, it would cause an uproar. However, after a while, they all looked at each other, but no one made a move. It turned out that Sun Zhongrui and Yang Jiyuan had died mysteriously, and now it was Shun Xiaolong's turn. They were all worried that if they killed Shun Xiaolong and exposed something in the future, They would be used as scapegoats by others to appease the public. As his eyes flashed across everyone's faces, Murong Fu naturally guessed what they were thinking. He secretly despised them, but he said, "Why don't we do it together? Each of us will stab him once. If anything happens in the future, we will share the glory and shame together." Master Murong is right. No wonder you are the descendant of the Hunan Commandery King. You have a broad vision, and we vulgar people can't compare to you. The others were overjoyed. They thought it was a perfect plan, so they all began to compliment him. Murong Fu smiled and said a few polite words. Then, he walked towards Shun Xiaolong with a few people sharpening their weapons. At this moment, Shun Xiaolong was already half dead. Seeing that the other party was coming to kill him, he had no strength to resist. He could only close his eyes in despair. A few screams sounded, but the death that Shun Xiaolong expected did not come. He opened his eyes in confusion and was shocked to find Lu Changhua and the others lying in a pool of blood. Blood was flowing from their backs, and they were cursing at Murong Fu. It turned out that at the moment when he raised his sword, Murong Fu did not slash at Shun Xiaolong. Instead, he slashed at the other 3 people beside him. His kung fu was higher than the others, and with the sudden attack, the other 3 people were seriously injured and lost the ability to fight. "Have you guys cursed enough?" Murong Fu's lips curled into a cold smile. "If you have cursed enough, you should be on your way." "Why?" Zhang Ning asked in shock and anger. Murong Fu smiled faintly. "Jilan is in the way, so we have to get rid of them." Lu Changhua hid behind and shouted, "If you kill us, Prime Minister Jia will not let you go. My army will not let you go either." Murong Fu snorted. "I will later announce that you died because of Shun Xiaolong's counterattack. At that time, the Imperial Court will reward you for your achievements. Rest assured and go on your way." They were really desperate now. In order to get rid of Shun Xiaolong this time, they were worried that the news would leak and cause a political storm, so they did not bring soldiers. They thought that with their joint forces and the Golden Wave Xuanhua, Shun Xiaolong would not be able to escape. Who knew that Murong Fu would suddenly turn around and attack? With a flash of snow, Murong Fu raised his sword and fell. Lu Changhua and the others had already fallen to the ground. Before they died, their eyes were still wide open. Murong Fu walked toward Shun Xiaolong with his sword. "It's your turn now." Shun Xiaolong laughed. "With these few people accompanying me on my way, it's worth it." At this moment, he had already accepted his fate. He had seen this scene and knew that the other party would not allow him to live. Moreover, even if the other party did not make a move, the Golden Wave Xuanhua would soon take his life. Murong Fu's sword was about to stab him, but suddenly a stone flew in from the side and hit the tip of the sword. He felt the web between his thumb and forefinger was shaken, and he almost dropped the sword in his hand. He reacted quickly and immediately used his qin gong to escape. He knew that the other party could almost hit his sword with a stone from so far away. The other party's martial arts was definitely not something he could match. Anyway, now that Lu Changhua and the others were dead, his plan was completed. As for Shun Xiaolong, he was poisoned by the Golden Wave Xuanhua and was destined to die. It did not matter if he killed him or not. Chapter 17:14. Are we just going to let him go like this? Ruan Xingzhu asked doubtfully. Song Qingshu smiled. Right now, he's more useful alive than dead. The higher-ups in Sichuan all died in accidents, and we need a reasonable explanation. He's the best candidate to take the blame. Ruan Xingzhu nodded, vaguely guessing what he was going to do. At this moment, a soft moan suddenly came from the side. It turned out to be Shun Xiaolong. He's dying. Ruan Xingzhu was about to bend over to check on his condition, but Song Qingshu stopped her. Don't touch him. Song Qingshu's expression was solemn. He's been poisoned by the golden ripple flower. Right now, his entire body is highly toxic. If you touch him, you'll be poisoned as well. Golden ripple flower? Ruan Xingzhu's beautiful face immediately paled. She was a top-notch secret agent, so she had naturally heard of this legendary poison. She even knew that Song Qingshu had no way out because he was poisoned. Then isn't he dead for sure? Ruan Xingzhu hurriedly asked. In their original plan, Shun Xiaolong was someone they could rope in. Who would have thought that he would be poisoned? Wouldn't that mean their previous plan was in vain? He won't die. Song Qingshu squatted down beside Shun Xiaolong and quickly sealed a few acupuncture points on his body. Be careful. She had just warned herself, but now that she saw him directly touching the poisoned Shun Xiaolong, Ruan Xingzhu subconsciously called out in worry. Song Qingshu smiled. Don't worry, this poison can't poison me. Only then did Ruan Xingzhu remember his past experience. She couldn't help but ask, previously, there were rumors that you were poisoned. Many people saw you being chased in Yangzhou, but after that, there was no news of you. Many people thought you had died, but who would have thought that not long after, you would reappear as lively as a dragon and a tiger? How exactly did you cure the world's #1 poison? With her reminder, Song Qingshu recalled the charming scene of him leaning against Qi Feng's body to detoxify the poison on the ship. A gentle smile involuntarily appeared on his face. This is a secret. Secrets make men more charming. Stingy, Ruan Xingzhu pouted. Her expression and appearance were completely unlike that of a mature, married woman. She was more like a little girl throwing a tantrum. Song Qingshu looked around and saw the people who were killed. He said, let's go back to Mirror Lake first. Otherwise, we won't be able to explain ourselves if someone else sees us. Ruan Xingzhu nodded. It was clear that Murong Fu was the murderer. They did not want to take the blame for him. Song Qingshu quickly brought Shun Xiaolong and Ruan Xingzhu back to the Mirror Lake. Then he asked for a secret room and started to remove the poison from Shun Xiaolong's body. The golden rippling Xuanhua was indeed the world's best poison. If Shun Xiaolong hadn't coincidentally encountered Song Qingshu, he would definitely have died. Because Song Qingshu had been poisoned by this poison before, he was very familiar with the toxicity of this poison. He circulated his Taishan real qi and slowly drew out the poison that lingered in his opponent's meridians. However, this poison was different from other poisons. It had seeped into the meridians, flesh, and blood very tightly. Even with Song Qingshu's ability, it took him almost 3 days to purge the remaining poison from Shun Xiaolong's body. Thank you for saving my life. After being unconscious for 3 days, Shun Xiaolong finally woke up and hurriedly thanked Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu extended his hand and gently lifted Shun Xiaolong up. General Shun's body is weak right now. Please don't stand on ceremony. How can I not repay the kindness of saving my life? Shun Xiaolong still stubbornly bowed to Song Qingshu. Worried that he would injure Shun Xiaolong, Song Qingshu withdrew his internal energy. Feeling the vast energy, Shun Xiaolong was shocked. He could not help but ask, may I know benefactor's name? This humble one is Song Qingshu. This time, he did not hide it from Shun Xiaolong. After all, he was an important part of the plan. The two of them needed to establish a certain level of trust. So it's King Qi. No wonder his martial arts are so powerful. Shun Xiaolong recalled the few times Shun Xiaolong made a move and could not help but come to a realization. He was not stupid. Even though Shun Xiaolong had changed his appearance during the battle at the Shu King's residence, he still knew it was him. Shun Xiaolong suddenly recalled Shun Xiaolong's warning when he kidnapped Yang Jiyuan a few days ago. He said regretfully, it's all my fault for not listening to King Qi's advice back then. That's why I ended up like this. Song Qingshu smiled. My identity is sensitive. Even if I told you the truth back then, you might not have believed me. I could only warn you like that. Now, it seems that you are safe and sound. Shun Xiaolong could not help but say hatefully, I did not expect the great Murong of Gusu to be so shameless and ruthless. General Shun, do you know why I saved Wuxi back then? Song Qingshu asked. This humble one is dull. Shun Xiaolong actually had this question in his heart, but since Song Qingshu was his benefactor, it was not convenient for him to ask. Because Wuxi did not commit treason. All of this was a conspiracy that Murong Fu and his people made up after they put Wu Shi under house arrest. Song Qingshu told him the secret one by one. Shun Xiaolong was shocked and angry. He did not expect the truth to be like this. It's all Jia Shidao's evil plan. During this time, Ruan Xingzhu also came in with tea, indicating that she was on Han Xingzhou's side. Shen Xiaolong no longer had any doubts. He was quite disappointed that Jia Shidao did not care about the people of the country for his own interests. But it's normal for him to kill me. Why did he kill Lu Changhua, Zhang Ning, and Zhu Bangyi? They are all Jia Shidao's trusted subordinates. How could Jia Shidao let him go after that? Shen Xiaolong still had a lot of doubts. General Shun, there is something you don't know. The Murong family has a will passed down from generation to generation. That is, the descendants must restore the Yin kingdom. Murong Bo and Murong Fu have been working hard for this for decades. Now that there is such a great opportunity in Sichuan, how could they let it go? Song Qingshu explained. Is he crazy? Restore the Yin kingdom that was destroyed hundreds of years ago? Shen Xiaolong could not help but exclaim. Ruan Xingzhu felt the same. She had just learned about this not long ago. She could not help but think that the Murong family were all crazy. This has become a demon in the hearts of the descendants of the Murong family. Song Qingshu also sighed endlessly. If it wasn't for the fact that Murong Fu's ambition to restore his country made him unable to breathe, Murong Fu would have been a proper tall, rich, and handsome man. How could he have fallen to such a state in the original work? No. Sichuan has always been easy to defend and difficult to attack. It is also a prosperous country that can be self-sufficient. If Murong Fu is allowed to grow here, the whole of Sichuan may really be divided into a new country in the future, Shen Xiaolong said in a hurry. Ruan Xingzhu said softly, we have been trying to stop this. Now, as long as General Shun gathers some of the important officials in Sichuan, what Murong Fu has done will be exposed, and he will not be able to stay in Sichuan anymore. Shen Xiaolong frowned. But at that time, Murong Fu might not admit to it. We don't have any proof that he killed Sun Zhongrui, Lu Changhua, and the others. If he makes a false claim, we might be in danger. General Shun, you don't have to worry. We have a complete plan. Murong Fu is doomed, Ruan Xingzhu said with a smile. Shen Xiaolong hesitated for a moment and finally nodded and said, okay. Anyway, my life was saved by the two of you. At worst, I will die with Murong Fu. Because the longer time dragged on, Murong Fu's position would be more stable. Shen Xiaolong ignored the obstruction and left the Mirror Lake with his weak body. He sneaked into Chengdu City and contacted the various officials. Song Qingshu could not help but ask Ruan Xingzhu, what perfect plan do you have? Even he did not know about this. Ruan Xingzhu smiled sweetly and said, this is a secret. Secrets make women more women. Song Qingshu's breath stopped. He did not expect that she would give him a taste of his own medicine so soon. Seeing his deflated look, Ruan Xingzhu chuckled and said, okay, I won't tease you anymore. I'm not as petty as you. I'll tell you. Actually, when the time comes, we just need to make Murong Fu admit to his crimes in front of others. How can he admit to it? Song Qingshu frowned. Although Murong Fu had many flaws, he had to admit that he had a proud character. Even if he was tortured, he might not admit to it. Did he have to use the soul transfer technique? However, the repercussions were too great. It was better not to use it unless it was absolutely necessary. Ruan Xingzhu smiled sweetly and leaned half of her body on him. She tiptoed and whispered in his ear, have you forgotten my special skill? Special skill? Song Qingshu subconsciously looked at her round and slender legs. Ruan Xingzhu was originally smiling sweetly, but when she noticed his gaze, she blushed and said, what are you thinking? I'm talking about disguising. Song Qingshu slapped his head. It was really not his fault. Who asked the two of them to be so close to each other during this period of time? He had misunderstood. In order to save his face, he hurriedly coughed and pretended to be serious and said, when the time comes, remember not to do it too deliberately. Otherwise, it will arouse suspicion and let the person Shen Xiaolong found here by chance. Don't worry. I'm not stupid. I do this kind of thing often. Ruan Xingzhu proudly raised her chin. Song Qingshu grabbed her soft waist and carried her up. He said with a smile, I almost forgot that Madam is the most cunning vixen. You're the vixen, Wan Xingzhu spat. She quickly realized something and said anxiously, Put me down. It's not good to be seen by others in broad daylight. Everyone on Mirror Lake knows about our relationship. Song Qingshu laughed and directly carried her into the room. He kicked the door shut. In the next few days, rumors began to spread in Chengdu that the sudden deaths of Sun Jinzhong, Yang Jiyuan, and Lu Chanwo were all because of Murong Fu. However, although the rumors were everywhere, Murong Fu did not move. Although the others did not say anything on the surface, the seeds of suspicion had been planted unknowingly. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.